This is Rob Fnuff from the Countercharge podcast, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast, the only podcast that has the balls to cover all their games.
Welcome. You are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. My name is Chris, and ever I'm joined by my good friend Clem.
Hello, everyone.
Yay! Perfect. And we're off to what's on the menu for today. So we've got another bumper episode for our dear listeners. So first we're going to give our apologies and introduce a guest, ? For this month. Then we're going to talk about Mantic news, and there's been an awful lot of Mantic news this month, all very exciting. We're then going to talk about our Warpath Firefight, our Warpath Deadzone. We're going to talk about our Pannithor. We've then got a segment on our Slow Grow, Kings of War project, Clem, Slow Grow. And then we've got, something like this.
Yeah, something like this. Not so slow. But that's the normal name.
We're going for the grow.
We're going to use.
Yeah, and then we've got a new segment for this month called Pannithor. Hey, see what we did there?
That's all on you.
We're then going to talk about something we're calling Kings of War Champions, and then that sounds exciting.
Yay.
That could never be a disappointing segment. Listen on for that for sure. And then our topic of the month is what we might want from Kings of War 4th edition. On that good old topic again. We'll then go to listener questions, and then we'll wrap up the show and talk about any conclusions we might have. This is going to be another full episode, Clem. What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I mean, we're 6 episodes in, and it feels pretty good. It's a good opportunity to have a chat with a good friend on a sort of regular basis, and I like it, and exciting episode ahead of us.
Yeah, it really is the perfect excuse to enforce us to actually just have a chat about Mantic stuff, which is exactly what I hope this would be. So, it's going very well in that regard. Right, are you
for
good?
Once.
Yeah, for
once.
So Clem, so I was a bit weird about the guest situation. We don't actually have a guest for today.
Well, we had one planned, and then it didn't work out, right? I think we can talk about it.
We can talk about it. It's official. Yeah, it's common knowledge. Yeah. So we had lined up Rob Berman, formerly of Mantic Games, but unfortunately, between us getting him to agree to this and us actually recording, he left Mantic. So that was a bit unfortunate. And to be honest, I think he's a super, super, super interesting guy. So I was really looking forward to talking to him, but it just, it hasn't worked out. So, and I was going to make a joke about how all of our guests need to be called Rob. Going forward, that's going to be like a hard and fast rule. If Ronnie wants to come on, sorry, Ronnie, unless your middle name is Robert, you're not allowed on. I wish I could change the rules, but I can't. So that's a bit of a shame. But to be honest, Clem, we're back to the classics. We've got plenty to talk about. There's an ambulance going past. Apologies, everybody. So let's crack on with a very full Mantic news. So, I think actually we're saving the really exciting stuff for last. But so Rob Berman has written some really interesting Firefight articles on what to buy next. I thought they were really informative, but you didn't actually love the GCPS or Plague articles, if I remember, Clem.
Yeah, I like the idea. Overall, I think that's exactly what they need to be doing. Like, okay, this is the obvious starting point. You buy the Strike Force or the Starter Army box, or whatever it's called. What next? But those articles, I understand where they stand, right? But it's kind of like reviewing every single product that you can buy. And it doesn't really, from my point of view, doesn't really give you a lot of information about the game and how you could build stuff I like a small detail on the Plague one. There's a tiny rule mistake. If I remember correctly, like the aberration cannot be, like it's a support character, and the special rule that they say, oh, you can use it for the aberration, actually doesn't work on support characters. So I like the idea. It's nicely written and everything, but the content could be slightly deeper. Go deeper, if you ask me. But yeah, I mean, I've been also, to be completely honest, I've been trying to write similar articles myself. So obviously, I will judge hard any article that is not the one that I've written. I'm focusing more on Kings of War at the moment. But yeah, and they take quite some time to write, and they're also very dangerous pieces of work, because it's like, hey, now that I've thought hard about how you get started with this or that army, well, the only thing I would have to do is buy a few boxes and then I get started, and so that's actually a dangerous thing to write, but interesting nonetheless. And yeah, overall, I think Mantic needs more and more coverage from various media, so it's good. It's good if they do some of that themselves, so those articles go in the right direction. I think they can be improved a little bit.
Yeah, it's the right idea. Maybe the execution wasn't perfect in this situation, right, Clem? But yeah, good idea. And to your point there, probably they could hand this over to some of the senior players. I mean, it's very obvious on the Fanatics group who are the really switched on people with the rules and stuff, and I think just reaching out to them to write some of this stuff would definitely be a good idea, and I think a lot of people would be happy to do it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, if you want to have like external writers, it might also take some work to have some uniform style in the writing and everything, but yeah, I'm sure they could support the community also to write these kind of articles more and more.
Yeah, but I think the starting point shouldn't be someone who kind of works in marketing. It should be someone that knows the army writing it, and then someone...
Right.
So the content is rock solid, the rules are rock solid, as you said, Clem, And then from there, then they can have some kind of marketing layer or feedback to improve it. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, dear listener. I think it was a good idea. Clem, I finished reading all 3 parts of The Breath of the Desert. A really good little story, and that was obviously the Empire of Dust 3-part short story they put on the website for free with a real Winged Hussar author. It was good. Yeah, and I've just got one little quote. So it's basically some ogre mercenaries go into the wastes, and you think, maybe some Empire of Dust might turn up, and I think it's not giving away any spoilers to say at some point they do, but there's some really good description of the kind of the ogre mercenary company, and it sort of just touches on they've been in the Halpi Mountains, so they've been doing stuff, and I thought it was actually pretty good, very enjoyable.
Nice.
And I've just got one very small snippet here to read out, and I think I'll try and affect a voice. He'd had worse clients, but he still found the Ophidian irritating. What he wouldn't do for a cigar. And and actually we only get very little snippets of Ophidians, and I found the Ophidian very irritating, I'll be honest. So
nice.
Yes, I'm looking forward to destroying the Ophidian armies in the future. And it was pretty much just a description of an Ophidian running across the sand, and I was like, that cowardly Ophidian. So it's done really. If its job was to make me dislike the new army before it's released, it's actually done a very good job there. But no, it's cool. It's a free little story. Everyone, check it out on the Mantic website. Yeah, Breath of the Desert. And
nice.
Yeah, great. And then we saw some very cryptic and seemingly very, very random, little teaser video that sort of mentioned ogres and then a load of other stuff that didn't seem to fit together.
Yeah, so I think we first saw mentioned in our email, like the newsletter that we get every week or something, that there would be big reveals for Kings of War. And then there was a quick video on Facebook, I think, about like showing piles of books and then catching fire and one book to rule them all. I mean, Yeah, they could improve a little bit the way they communicate, but I found it's pretty cool. Like, it got me excited when
Me
I saw the
too.
email. Like,
Me too, buddy.
big reveals. Was like, oh, that's nice. Like, what is it? Is it the new the next starter set? Is it a plastic kit? I bet it would be elves, or like I think that's an interesting thing to do. Like, obviously they don't have tons of news every week, every weekend, something new to buy. But for the amount of news that they have, I think organizing like some, getting the feeling that, oh, it's Christmas soon or something, like we get something exciting coming up, I think it's nice.
Yeah, definitely. And you were kind of speculating it might be elves, plastic elves, new elves. But now we pretty much know what it is, right?
Of course, yeah. Then Ronnie posted the video, then Kyle also posted a video. And so it will be like a Kings of War rulebook. So it's not a 4th edition, it's like Ronnie mentioned, 3.1 or 3.5. It's basically every books to date merged into one updated Gamers edition. So all of the fluff is now in a PDF and for free downloadable on the website, from what I understand, or will be soon. And instead of buying a Clash of King book, you get an updated Gamers edition book with absolutely everything you need to play, which is 100% what I wanted. So what can I say except thank you, I guess, right? It's
Yeah, it's a really easy decision to buy that, and it's at a fair price as well. I think it's something like €40, €50, something like that.
And I'm not sure they've announced the price yet, but I would expect it to be slightly more expensive than the Clash of King books.
Yeah. Which is
more or
what
less
they've
the
said.
Gamers Edition book, and that's about it.
I think I saw it. It's gone up on pre-order. I think it's Broadsword Gaming in Ireland,
Right.
and I think it was about €45 there, which I think is a very fair price for all that content. That's a huge amount of content.
Yeah, I mean, I like that by spending that amount of money each year, you will have the latest book and you have every single thing you need inside one book.
Yes. You don't have to worry about any FAQs. There's nothing else to know other than what's inside that book. Yeah. I absolutely hate it when games go across several books, FAQs, so okay, this bit of the book is still good, that bit is now completely changed, this bit is in a different book, this bit's in an FAQ. So just having everything in the book, actually, to be honest, makes me a very relaxed gamer, because I know that's all correct. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think that's really an interesting proposition, and also okay, that's what I need to budget for the year. It's like 45 plus whatever reseller maybe percentage off that you get or something like this. I think it's a great deal, so I'm looking forward to seeing this book. They've also announced a few things that will be in this new rulebook, right? Like for the next Clash of King update. So they mentioned several play styles, like smaller games. I think they call it Ambush.
Ambush, yeah, 1,000 points. So if you think back, Clem, to our 3rd episode where we had Rob from Countercharge, we were talking about the clickbaity, what do we hate about Kings of War, what do we want to change, and a lot of the stuff we talked about is this stuff. We talked about Kings of War as a hard game to get new players into. We've had that conversation. So the idea of just having 1,000-point game, which is kind of a game all of itself, not just disappointing Kings of War because you don't have enough stuff. That's such a cool idea, right?
I mean, I like the idea, I like the principle to make it simpler. I'm curious about how they've done it. I mean, there were fan-made versions like Flash Kings of War or Kings of War and Flash, I don't remember what it's called. Basically 750 points with different army building rules. Like every unit unlocks something, like irregular units, troops don't need unlocks, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember all the details. In theory, I like it, right? Like it's kind of like Kings of War, but doesn't require as much miniatures or as big of an army to get started with it, and can be played faster on a smaller surface. I think that's exactly what you need.
A little bit of campaign stuff in there, maybe. Progression game to game would be cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they mentioned anything like that.
I don't think it was mentioned. No, that's me wildly speculating. That's been just wildly speculating. But they did mention things like siege rules, which is something we talked about before.
Right, yeah, it existed in 2nd edition, toward the end of 2nd edition. I think the Clash of King 19 was it. I had the siege rules, so they're always pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to see this book, and I think they're really doing the right thing. So that's nice.
And actually, I really appreciate there's not a new army this year. There doesn't have to be a new army every year. We're up to nearly 30.
Yeah.
Let's just take stock of what we have and just make sure the game itself is really fun.
Absolutely, there's work to do with what is here already. So I'm glad they didn't just release another army without finishing the rest first.
And there's something else to talk about which is super exciting, but just in case we forget, Clem, hard plastic ogres, and there was a storm giant, and it was only very, very tiny in the video I saw with Ronnie, but there was a painted storm giant, so I could hardly see it, but it's for the Riftforge Orcs, and I'll be honest, I'm almost certainly going to buy that. It looks awesome, even though it was tiny.
I mean, I don't... Well, you're joking, right? That it's tiny because it's basically
no. It's just in the video.
Kit.
The model is huge, but just in the video, I could hardly see it because it was, the camera was panned out on Ronnie, and Ronnie had it in the table in front of him on the video. And was there a newer video where you could see more of it?
I think I've seen, or maybe there was one screenshot in that video where you see like a full frame.
Oh,
of that
I need
guy.
to see that then. Yeah, I've only just seen the.
Yeah,
tiny,
watch it again.
Yeah, it looked awesome from what I saw.
Yeah, really, I think it's a successful miniature. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really smart how they've done it. Like I have one normal giant for my goblins. I have one the Shadow Hulk, I think, for the Night Stalkers.
Yep.
Super cool miniatures. Yeah, I really like them. They're kind of a pain in the ass to transport because they're so big.
Yeah.
That's my only concern with them. But yeah, otherwise really nice. Yeah, and plastic ogres. I mean, yes, it makes sense. Somehow I didn't think about them because I already have a full Mantic ogres army, and so I'm like,
And is it the rustic stuff?
Of course, yeah. The one that I have is rustic plus I think there's some metal bits even for, like the hunters are metal, stuff like this. So obviously plastic makes a lot of sense and it's super exciting.
Yeah.
It's just for myself. Will I get some of those? Yeah, maybe a box to check them out, or maybe if they have good options for shield breakers, or siege breakers, or whatever they're called.
Siege breakers.
The different six guys. Because I don't like the resin version that they have now, and so I still have to hack something together for mine.
Yeah.
But, that's it's good news.
But I could see, I mean, I've only seen them a little bit, but I could really see other gamers buying those models, right? If they're really nice hard plastic ogres. There aren't that many ogres out on the market. I could really see a big market for that, so that's really great. And then, Clem, what was this about an app?
I think they just mentioned very quickly an app, but we don't know much about it, like a companion app. Doesn't replace
Easy Army.
Easy Army, from what I understand, but we don't know much more about this. Like, is it to check the rules? Is it? We don't know exactly, to be honest. But if it's well done, then sure. But until I can see it, I'm like, I don't know. It's not like I feel like I need an app for Kings of War. I don't know what you think. Like.
No, I mean, I need Easy Army. I've got Easy Army. I think I pay, $2 a month. I'm happy with it the way it is. But I'm interested to hear what the new app is, Who knows?
Yeah, it could be really well done. I'm just
not sure what we're missing.
Yeah,
not sure.
But why not? Why not?
But cool.
Yeah.
Wait and see.
No. Yeah, so overall, exciting stuff coming up for Kings of War in the next few weeks, next few months. When I think about it, the Ogres release will be pretty quick, I think, because, I don't know, maybe they will re-release like the Hunters or the Berserkers as resin add-ons to the plastic kit. I don't know.
That would make sense, right? That would make sense. Yeah.
But with the plastic kit for the warriors and the chariot also, they've announced the chariots, I think.
Yep.
I mean, you've almost got the army covered, right? So it's a good news. I mean, I really want them to have 100% coverage of an army list of all of their army lists, and so they have to start somewhere. And if they start with ogres, then sure, that'd be great. Because I like their style, like rustic, the rustic miniatures, like the old plastic ones, so great. It's kind of a gap when you assemble them. It's a bit of a pain, but I love the style. And so if you get them with nice hard plastic miniatures, sure. I mean, those will sell for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it's pretty good.
It'd be the same if they brought out hard plastic rockers. I wouldn't be pretending I only had 6 different sculpts. Yeah.
Right. But that's because you're an addict. That's different.
Yeah, that's it. That's the stuff. Right, Clem, that was a lot of news. We've probably forgotten something. I think we have to put that into every episode now, right? As we're going through.
Yeah, that's the
get out of jail free
disclaimer. Card. Yeah, I mean that's who we are. I don't remember any big news for Warpath. But I guess people are still kind of digesting everything that we received previously.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be exciting to see the Rebs join Firefight. Maybe Mason Labs one way or another. Like if you could integrate them in Firefight, I think it would be pretty cool as well. Like I have tons of scenario ideas where they could be involved.
Yeah, 100%. And I think actually that one will be probably the first one, because I think that's actually really easy to do. Now they've got the Deadzone kits for Maison Labs. Now we just need rules, right? To be honest.
Yeah, it's very easy.
Yeah. Whereas, the Rebs, they won't do it until they've got hard plastic troops, and then there's so many different species for the Rebs. That's a real headache, isn't it, to be honest? It's such a broad faction.
Yeah, I think Rebs will be pretty hard to do well, because what sprue do you want to make for them?
Exactly. I mean, exactly. Yeah. Human sprue, and then you've got all the different weird aliens too. I mean, you probably end up with 4 or 5 different sprues just for the basics.
Yeah, or maybe they would have to change the concept a little bit and make them sort of like Mason Labs. Because when you think about it, Mason Lab is, you take some GCPS, you take some Plague, and you add a few sprinkles of magic on top, and boom, you get a new faction, right? So maybe Rebs is something similar, one way or another.
I think so, Clem, but I think if you do it too many times, you run the risk of all the factions basically seeming the same. So I think Rebs, I think there'd really be demand for Rebs. I think people are excited about it because of Star Wars, because of Serenity and Firefly. There's this idea of the plucky rebels really strikes a chord. So I think, just my opinion, but I think if they're going to do Rebs, I think they should really do Rebs. Really go for it, rather than doing it on the cheap. I do Maison Labs on the cheap for sure. And I'll definitely have a Maison Labs army. But for the Rebs, really go for it and lean into that kind of, Han and, all that stuff. It's exciting. Cool.
Yeah, but then maybe the Nameless would be easier to make. Like, Nameless, there's not much to think about, right?
Yeah.
Path to a Nameless in Firefight is probably easier. Anyway, there's no news about this. We know nothing about it, right, so
it's just the only other thing I'd say is this month I've convinced myself I need a rip-off of Alien/Aliens. The aliens, the Xenomorphs. I need an army of that for Firefight so I can fight them against the GCPS.
Yeah, that's. Are you like aliens, like alien movies, or like Starship Troopers movies, like type of aliens?
Well, that too. But this month I was thinking about Alien as in Aliens. Yeah. But yeah, I've already got a record saying if they had Starship Trooper style aliens, I would buy them, and I would. But also, if they made aliens, I would also buy them too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have potential with Nameless, right? Like, come up with interesting lore for them. I think there's already some stuff. I haven't read it, but they can probably push some interesting stuff, like a new campaign or like a big event. But yeah, let's see what they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, Nameless are weird. I have read bits. They're kind of undersea Cthulhu monsters. They were actually pretty peaceful, and then the GCPS had kind of jerked them around a fair bit, and they sort of and there's a religious cult, basically. That's pretty much all I know, and that's a really interesting idea. There's a religious cult with the undersea Cthulhu monsters from space. That's like an extra thing I wasn't expecting. But yeah, Oh, and so I didn't play any Firefight this month, Clem, but I did find on eBay a really, really old out-of-print box called, I think, The Fate of the Forge Star. And it included 40 Marauders of the old... This box is like 10 years old, right? So it had 40 old Marauder models. And then it also had a Marauder trike thing, which was,
nice.
A shonky rip-off of Gorkamorka, It is...
Can't go wrong.
Let's just say I'm glad Mantic went in their own direction for the Marauder faction. Let's say that much. Yeah. But it also had a few hard plastic steel warriors, albeit... Okay, so they are hard plastic, Clem, but there's 2 different sculpts.
Right, like the good old... Like the very first Games Workshop plastics. Like I love
There's
them.
2 sculpts. They're actually... I really like them, and I've painted them up, and I'm going to use them in my games. But there's 2 different sculpts. But it's cool. I'm really glad I own this kit. It also advertised saying it came with a scenario, so I was kind of interested to take that and run with it in Firefight, just adjust it a bit for Firefight. But it is, very basic, so that's a bit of a disappointment.
Too bad.
But the models are cool in their own way, and I'm glad I have it. So now I've got... That takes me up to 80 Marauders I need to do. That on top of all the Marauders I've already done,
Nice.
But it's cool. It's a fun thing. My friend Manuel also had an extra Hornet, so I bought that off him. And while he was doing it, to sweeten the deal, he also 3D printed me some Forgefather proxy stuff. So I've got a ton more Valkyries, and he did some Bombots for me. So
Nice.
Yeah, so changed my plans a little bit, but that was really cool of him, and those proxies are very, very cool. So thanks, Manuel, if you're listening.
Nice.
Cheers, buddy.
Did you post pictures of the bomb bots on the Facebook group? I haven't seen them.
No, I haven't. I'll get them built and painted or whatever I need to. I haven't even looked at them, I'll be honest. They've just gone into the pile of shame. So at some point I'll get that up on the Facebook group when it's ready. But
pile of opportunity, not pile of shame. No shame.
Pile of cupboard of opportunity.
Investment in plastics. Yeah.
Basement of opportunity. Investment in futures. Yeah, future happiness. And what about you, Clem? Any Firefight stuff this month?
So I haven't done much. I mean, I sorted out what plague I have left to paint. I ended up cancelling my order of the corruption because it was just not in stock. It's just a pain. But yeah, I kind of want to finish painting the plague that I have, because they're relaxing to paint. Like I like doing it, and so it's a good way to get back into painting. Because between vacations and being sick, I wasn't home or wasn't with free time that much over the past few weeks, and so plague is a good excuse for that. And then still doing 1,000 or 1,500 points of GCPS. Just to have 2 small, nice armies that I can use for games anytime I want. But and the other thing that I've been thinking about for Firefight is refining ideas for a narrative gaming day sometime in October, I think, as you know. But that's kind of a secret project at the moment. We'll talk about it later. So that's also super exciting, I think, to try to come up with good scenarios, good stories, and kind of articulate scenarios and why you actually play games. I think that's really adds one layer on top of it. But otherwise, no game, unfortunately. I need to make time for that in the next few weeks. So that's about it for my Firefights news.
Nice. Yeah, we've talked about that many times, right, Clem? So you know exactly what you're doing with the plague stuff. So there's no thinking, there's no decisions to be made. It's just exactly what paints you're using for each element, and it's pure you time, right? You can just sit and relax and just plop some.
Yeah.
You monster, it's straight out of the pot, you monster.
Yeah, that's how I do it. It's almost like watching Netflix, right? Like on the level of brain engagement. So even if I'm tired after a day of work, I can always put whatever show on Netflix and just be a couch potato and watch it. Painting my plague is almost on a similar level because I know exactly what I'm doing, so I can just go there, put a podcast on or some music, and you just get cracking painting them. So that's nice, and that's honestly 90% of my paints when starting a new painting project is figuring out, okay, what should I do, like what colors, what techniques and everything. Once that's figured out, the rest is just pleasure.
And then you know what you're doing. And speaking of which, Clem, have you put any thought into your GCPS? Are you going to go with the classic green style? Are you going to do something a bit more?
I think, yeah, pretty much. I'll definitely use contrast paints as well. I think I will reuse a similar green that I'm using for my plague because I kind of want to make them part of the same battalion, if that makes sense.
It entirely makes sense. So, and also from a narrative perspective, right? So these guys were all one happy unit, and then plague happened, and some of them have been turned, and some of them haven't yet.
Exactly. Yes. And so I think to play them against each other, also if they have similar color schemes, it will look great on the table. So I won't go crazy and reinvent something entirely different for my GCPS, for sure.
Nice. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Cool. I think that's pretty much all we've got for Firefight. Shame we haven't played any games this month, but hopefully we can change that next month. Should we move on to talking about our Warpath Deadzone?
Yeah, it just reminds me of something. Sorry to interrupt. Could have talked about it in the news as well. There's a slow grow going on for Firefight with Blackjack Legacy, the YouTube channel. The guy who covers Mantic stuff on YouTube. And I think they also started in September for 3 months, I want to say. Like a slow grow Firefight challenge that looks pretty nice. So who knows, maybe I'll just enter with my GCPS and that will be a good excuse to get those guys done. What I like is it's a slow grow that isn't, over the next 6 months paint 700 points or whatever, which is like, why would I bother join that stuff? So I think it's over 3 months for, was it 1,000 points or 1,500? But like a full army in 3 months, which I think is a reasonable pace.
It's more ambitious, isn't it? It's more ambitious.
Yeah, but I think it's realistic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we both know that the Kings of War army doesn't have to take you 2 years to paint. And for many people, if you do a slow grow, paint 200 points a month, you do the math and like, I will never ever have a full army.
Yeah.
So this is not the way to go. And I think whatever you're doing, it should be feasible in 3 months, like this kind of projects. Like otherwise normal humans, like normal hobbyists, will just lose interest, or like
I would never finish that. Yeah, if I was doing 200 points a month for a full Kings of War army, I'd never finish that project.
Yeah,
after 3 or 4 months, I'd be bored and go and do something else.
Yeah,
or it would drop down the list, also, the to-do list.
You're also very fast, so for you it's no big deal, I guess. But even for someone else, I think it is doing them a disservice to say, hey, paint only 200 points a month, because then people go crazy and will try to do highlights on skeletons or zombies in their undead army or whatever, and then they will spend way too much energy and time on units and in the end completely lose interest or like lose stamina. And so I think doing it no matter what in 3 months is the right way to go, because yes, this will be your main project for those 3 months. Like, this will keep you busy for sure, but at least like the end is in sight, and very quickly you get something to play with, and I think it's really satisfying in a way, much more than 200 points a month.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like as we teased earlier, like the slow grow project. Slow is not my type. I think it's a mistake to do it too slowly. So.
To your point as well, Clem, of if you did 200 points a month of Kings of War, a lot of what we're doing is muscle memory of, like, we're talking about your plague. That's a good example. You've done a load of plague recently. You know exactly how you do it. You remember exactly what you're doing. You know your colours. You know what you're doing. You know how you want to approach it. If you're doing 200 points a month, you're kind of going to forget that a little bit. You know.
Yeah.
You're going to lose,
absolutely.
and honestly, not feel that connected to your army as well. You know, like that's just going to be 200 points a month isn't going to take that much of your free time. So it's going to be probably hobby number 9 of all your different things going on in your life, right? It's not going to be near the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It also kind of disconnects you from the end game, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
If you say, okay, let's do an army for the next 3 months, you can right away schedule a game 3 months from now. Like, you schedule the game and you're like, okay, for that event or that game, I need to have my army assembled and like painted as much as I can. If it's 200 points a month, it's like, okay, in 14 months I have an army. Like, who knows what happens in 14 months, right?
Exactly. So, and also, in fairness, like, I don't, you know me, I really don't think about these things, but the reason I put out an army a month or whatever is because I'm just really excited and I get obsessed with this idea of doing this. And it's, you know, actually it's really, really all-encompassing and enjoying, and, you know, it takes up a lot of my thoughts and my free time, and I'm getting an awful lot out of that in that month or 2 months or 3 months, you know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do something similar, except they never deliver on the final results, right? Like, people will buy the latest hotness, and then it just ends up in the pile of stuff that maybe someday you'll touch, and in the end it just stays in the pile of opportunities.
In fairness, Clem, I still have a very large pile like that.
Me too, of course, of course. Yeah, I'm just I don't know, I've had some discussions again recently with friends, like, oh, Kings of War is hard, so many miniatures you need. I could never build a full army, blah blah blah. I can only paint like 10 people for a skirmish game. It's like, yeah, and then when you look at the skirmish miniatures that they paint, it's like with highlights and tons of time. It's like, just spend the same amount of time but on 15 miniatures instead of just one.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, it doesn't take more time. It's just you don't paint them to the same level.
And as you said, Clem, it's badge painting is a skill, but when you know what you're doing, it's the most relaxing thing in the world, slapping paint on the models. When you know what you're doing, it's really fun, really relaxing. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to make any decisions. Once you've done all that stuff, the actual painting bit is easy. And having another 50 models to paint, or however many, to me, that's just fun, you know. That's the good bit of the hobby. You know, painting models is the fun bit.
Yeah, and the magic thing that happens as well is you paint 50 models in the sloppiest of ways, and when you put all of them on the table, they look like an awesome, gorgeous unit.
Yeah.
You know, because you see only the big picture, and no one ever looks at the boots of the soldiers again and say, "Oh, you weren't so neat when you painted that guy right here. I can see it." It's like, no one cares. Like, I see the whole unit, it looks great. Like,
I'm so looking forward to the day when we're playing and someone comes to our table and says, "Oh, hang on, guys, stop having fun. You haven't highlighted the boots on the 3rd row of zombies." I'm really looking forward to that. I'm relishing it, to be honest. I'm relishing it, Clem.
No, that's true.
Cool. So, what have I done? So, Deadzone. So, I ran some demos. You'll be shocked to hear. I had 2 demo days, one at a local shop again back in Bad Camberg, and one at the club east of Frankfurt.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going pretty well. Definitely in both situations, I had more people. I think because I've just been doing it a little while now, it's more expected. So there's more. I think that it makes a big difference that, oh, this guy's back showing us this same game. I think there's a level of reassurance. There was a guy that saw it on Facebook and just popped in to come and say hello. That was quite nice. You know, he didn't actually have much time, but he just wanted to make a point of coming in and saying hello. My friend Alex, who's just the nicest guy, most fun to play with, he's interested in VMin, so I think he's back from holiday next month, so it won't be immediately, but I think he's going to do a VMin faction for Deadzone, so I'm really excited about that.
Nice.
We'll obviously play Deadzone, and then at some point I'll say, hey, look, Firefight's also really, really fun.
I mean, once you have a Deadzone, like once you have foot in Deadzone Firefight isn't too hard to upgrade to.
Exactly. And he's kind of the administrator of the club. He's the guy that has the key to the building and all this kind of thing. And
Nice.
So if I can get him in, I mean, we had great fun playing it. So that's right. Oh, and Clem, actually, no, I did want to ask you.
Wait. I just wanted to make a comment on what you said earlier as well. I mean, part of the demo, sure, is to show the game, but showing up to the shop or to the club and showing that the game is alive and like there are people interested in it, I think is half of the work of a demo person.
Yeah.
Like you're not just here to this is how you play the game, or here are my miniatures, you can borrow them. Basically giving the game some life in your community, in your area, is really crucial, and I think people are very sensitive to that. Definitely. Every time I do a demo in the shop, so many people come over and chat, oh, what is this, blah blah, and ask questions. And I'm sure by doing this repeatedly is really how you create a local gaming group interested in the game to like.
Yeah,
so good for you,
buddy.
man. Good for you.
Yeah, definitely, buddy. Yeah, it's I love this stuff. So it's I got to put the hard work in to try and make it happen. It's for my benefit as well, because hopefully I'll have a lot more players. It was quite funny. There was in the shop there was a very very nice guy who was about our age, so let's say late 30s, right, Clem? Seemed super nice. And I said, oh, have you got time for a demo now? And he was like, well, not really, because my mum is waiting in the car. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I gave him my phone number anyway, so he hasn't actually called, but I gave him my phone number anyway. But that was quite kind of funny. And Clem, so on that point, actually, Clem, so I gave a demo, without going into too much detail, Deadzone demo, and there was one, most of it goes great, right? But one guy was just super, super negative, complaining it wasn't fair, it wasn't balanced. Somebody else was having a demo at the same time, and I was kind of refereeing basically. And when his units were being shot at, he was in a huff taking the models off the board before anyone had rolled any dice, and then having to put them back on the board again when the shot missed, and like just being super, super toxic and negative about, saying, oh, this game is totally unfair, and things like this. How would you deal with that situation, Clem?
I mean, people are weird. It's something you have to deal with, unfortunately. But as I said, when you demo a game, you're not just here to show the rules. It's kind of like show what the game is about, why you like it, and that it's well supported. And so, obviously, I would make an extra effort to stay calm and polite with someone like this if I'm actually doing let's say an official demo. Maybe I'll try to discuss a little bit and try to figure out why the person is grumpy and negative. Like if it's someone I know in particular, maybe it's easier to figure that kind of stuff and understand. But then, I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? Like someone with that kind of behavior, maybe they were just having a bad day, but even then, like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. So, at the same time, like, after all I've just said, I'm not doing demos to bring people in against their will, or I don't want to bring in toxic people to the game. So, if someone is really having a bad behavior, it's not my job to twist their arm to absolutely make them play the game no matter what. Or if someone is really making things difficult and I'm really not having a good time, sure, I'll be polite and get to the end of the demo, like whatever was agreed to, and that's it. Like, thanks. See you never.
I wonder if there was an element of that playing up that, a little bit, because it's a two-way thing, right? It's like when you go for a job interview, yes, you're trying to be successful with the job interview, but to a certain extent, it's a two-way street, right? You're trying to figure out, do I actually want this job, right? So,
absolutely, yes.
So it's the same way of, well, do I really want this guy playing? And actually, if it was just me with the demo, it really wouldn't have been so much of an issue, but because there was somebody else also having a demo, and it clearly negatively impacted their experience. then it was awkward. And I kind of feel like maybe I should have just politely ended the game and just said, look, I'll be honest, I don't think you're getting anything out of this. Thanks ever so much for trying the game, but, let's
or like offer them a way out. Like, be, I don't know, I love passive aggressiveness sometimes. Like, looks like you really are not having a good time. Why don't you just stop right here? Let me take over your faction and I'll finish the demo for you, because obviously, I mean, something's not according to your taste, and thanks for coming over, bye. And then, take over, and because I didn't understand that there were actually 2 people playing, and one of them was a butthole like this.
Yeah.
Family-friendly show again, sorry people. But anyway, no, I mean, at that point, you just trying to salvage what can be salvaged for yourself and for the other person having a demo. Yeah, that's sad.
But it is, and I'll just say that, dear listener, it is incredibly rare. And this is, to be honest, everyone I've played Deadzone with has been absolutely unfailingly lovely. This was, very much trying to get new people in, and I think very occasionally it just happens where it doesn't quite work. Cool. Thanks. Thanks for your input.
I think we both know not great people to play with. Like, that one person at the gaming shop on the club when like, I don't really want to play with you.
Yeah.
Or the that one person who's always posting on whatever, like, channel chat thing, hey, who wants to play a game? And like everyone's like, nope, not
crickets
gonna take
chirping.
Yeah, or like the awful thing as well, like whenever there's a newcomer training, it's like, hey everyone, I'm new to game X and Y, and who would like to show me how it's played, blah blah blah, like, enthusiastic newcomer. And then you have that guy jumping in, it's like, hey, yes, of course I want to play, and then bringing the nastiest list and
destroy you. Yes.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff.
Yes. As happened, as I was telling Rob Fnuff, my first game of Age of Sigmar, where the guy showing me the game just used it as an excuse to absolutely destroy me, to the point where I couldn't attack him back because the game was broken. Yay!
Yeah.
Big fun. Big fun for the new players.
Part of it is also the game itself, I guess. I don't know. That's
I'm just being mean at that point. No, it's a mix. Cool.
Anyway.
Yes, and so Clem, we've talked about it previously before, creating a repository for custom scenarios and community scenarios for the Mantic Games. We're making slow progress, right? Because it turns out a lot of the things we're trying to do, they're a lot of work, Clem, and it turns out we've got other stuff to do as well.
Yes, so, absolutely.
So the positive progress I can say, so what I've ended up using to speed things up is I've just used Jamboard, which is the Google Drive project mapping. It's like for making sprints, basically, right? So you've got your yellow sticky bits of paper and such. And I've created a Deadzone scenario called the Train Heist. And I let 2 people look at it. One of them was you, Clem, and both of you immediately said, this is horribly imbalanced. So that's fine. That's what I need. So I need to, at some point I will demo that, but I don't want to demo it with new players because it's so horribly imbalanced. So I will demo the scenario I wrote myself. But I think actually the kind of the Jamboard system I've created, very simply, I think actually it works just fine. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it works.
It does, yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice to just hack a scenario together.
Yeah, fitting all that text into one Jamboard document, obviously it doesn't quite work, but I kind of don't want to go to 2 documents, but that's something we can discuss, like having a Word document to it. Yeah. But anyway, we'll think about that. But I feel like we're onto something at least.
Yeah, I think it's important to, how can I say this? Find a way to experiment with scenarios relatively quickly. So you Jamboard like with sticky notes, like digital sticky notes and so on, that you can hack together in 2 minutes when you have an idea for a scenario. It's actually perfect because the barrier to entry to that is pretty low, right? Like anyone can just hack around and express their idea for a scenario. But then a lot of things just happen, like work differently when you actually do them, and so I think you need to play the scenario or even if you just solo play it to kind of get an idea or just adjust it a little bit.
Yeah.
And at the same time, not all scenarios have to be fully balanced, right? Like maybe this is more a narrative scenario, and going in, you know, it's not going to go well for one of the two factions, but it's just a question of how bad it goes for them. Who knows, right? As long as the story is clear and fun, and everyone who gets involved has a good time playing it, that doesn't matter. Like balanced, it's not an absolute necessity in scenarios. I think asymmetrical scenarios where like one side is maybe a much higher chance can be super fun. Like they can really tell interesting stories. You just have to be very explicit about what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, that's it, Clem. That's it. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, I'll find the time to do some play testing on that. And I mean, it might be once, you know, we've got this quick and dirty way for users to create their scenarios. It might be that kind of when things have been play tested a bit and we're confident with it, maybe we have a slightly fancier way of showing that information and kind of publishing it.
Yeah. I think that's the right way to do it, because if you start right away with, hey, let's make it look good, then it takes a long time to do that, and then you don't even know if the scenario works or if you need to change like the setup or like the conditions.
Totally.
Doesn't work. Like you want to do this when you're at the Jamboard, then.
And as well, Clem, let's say, for example, down the road we've got... I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you there, Clem. Sorry, buddy.
Go.
And let's say once we've got 10 scenarios that we're happy with in Jamboard, then it doesn't seem so much, actually, for me or you to go in and make them look nice all at the same time or, you know, over the course of a couple of weeks. To me, that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to go. Like 10 scenarios, or like if we have sort of coherent ensemble one way or another. Like I love asymmetrical scenarios, for example, or like scenarios that have like a thick story going on. So maybe if we come up with 4 or 5 such scenarios, then it's time to publish a nice PDF with all of these with a sort of nice format.
Exactly.
Or if we come up with scenarios like I mentioned earlier, like for a small gaming day or narrative events or something like this, that's also something that we could, once it's written as a draft and tested and experimented with, that's something we could actually publish someplace and share with you guys. I think that's a good way to approach it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I feel like, to be honest, once we've got enough of these, I really would like us to have a gaming day where, wouldn't it be cool if, hey, everyone's playing our scenarios and, you know, there might be a little story between them even. Who knows?
Yeah,
that would be cool.
Be nice.
Right. So I think Clem and I will just do a little bit more work on the train heist, as it's called. And then at some point, I think actually once we're kind of happy with it, we'll share the Jamboard on the Facebook page. Or somewhere else, Clem, maybe, potentially. But I think
maybe.
the Facebook page works for now.
It's a good starting point, and then maybe another platform could come in handy later once we have stuff a bit more stabilized.
Yeah, so I might ask our dear listeners if they have the time to playtest it and just give me some feedback. That would be great. Was it fun? Was it balanced? Doesn't necessarily have to be balanced, but was it fun? Cool. So, Clem, I think that will do for our Warpath stuff. Should we move on to talking about our Pannithor stuff?
Yep, I think it's about time. Not much happened in Pannithor for me lately. Like, no games. Unfortunately, I almost played on UB2 recently, but my opening cancelled last minute, which happens. And then I was sick and traveling, blah, 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 blah. So, on the generic news for Pannithor, not much. Did you play any games recently? Or?
So on Friday, I was due to go to Mannheim to play with Sebastian, but because it's cursed, it just never works out. So he cancelled on me a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm cancelling on him, and it's just going like that. The game is never going to happen because of life.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've been unwell, so I was feeling really ropey. Got to Friday, and I thought, do I really want to get in the car and drive for an hour and a half there, hour and a half back now, or do I want to just go to bed as soon as I possibly can? So I definitely made the right decision. I cancelled with plenty of time. I think I cancelled on a Tuesday or something. So gave him a few days' notice. But yeah, unfortunately not. Haven't managed to game. So I suppose we don't have any news on Kings of War, Clem.
Well, not generic news, but we do have a new segment, I think. Well, 2 new segments, but 1 big news segment. Do you want to introduce our dear listeners to what we've come up with?
Yeah, I think you'd explain this a very different way to how I'm going to explain it, but sure, I'll do it, buddy. So, Clem, you were talking about starting a new army.
Yes.
And you thought, well, why don't I do it in such a way that I can kind of share that information with the podcast and the community, and kind of, how does one, because we talked about it before, right? How does one attack this big hobby project of a new Kings of War army, right? So we kind of wanted to get stuff out of it. And you said to me, well, Chris, you don't need to start a new army because you did an army 2 months ago and you can just leverage that. So Clem decided to do a Salamanders army, and basically, me being me, I just got very jealous and I wanted to do a Salamanders army. So I said, get out of the way, Clem, I'm doing a Salamanders army too. But I nearly did an Empire of Dust army. And I was really not sure which army box I was going to order. And then a guy on Facebook was selling some of my absolute favourite Salamanders models for about half price. Albeit by the time I paid the increased tax and stuff to get it to Germany, it ended up working out almost the same as if I'd have just bought it in Germany. But never mind. So we're doing
still a good deal.
Salamanders army. Yeah, still a decent deal. So we're both doing a Salamanders army. We're doing it for the pod and for ourselves and for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really, I wanted to try to write a better how to get started with Army X, like in a practical way, like not just, really with the perspective of, okay, I really want to play those guys at some point, and I'm kind of new to Kings of War, and what do I do? And usually when I look at any game, I'm like, what is a standard army like? And it's very hard to figure that out. Like most of the time, maybe you will see a battle report here or there, but I don't know. It's always a bit sketchy, in my opinion. And the other thing is, okay, I buy the starter army, and then what do I do? Like I can build archers or like a double-handed swords or a sword and shield. What do I do with them? And the problem is you don't know anything about the army or the game yet, and so it's pretty hard to navigate. And so, yeah, I started to work on an article like this about salamanders, and very quickly was like, yeah, they're actually pretty cool, and yeah, I could actually get started with them. And so that's one thing led to another. Also, I think a big deciding factor was my FLGS having a big sale on salamanders, so I was like, okay, I'll clear your shelves for you. If you lower the price, I'll get them. And so I bought a bunch of them, and also I started to look a bit more at the list, because initially I was like, yeah, they seem nice. Like I like the models, like what I can see, but yeah, I was never too sure about their core units. Right? It's like, they eat on 4s. And it's a heavy infantry.
And they're slow.
What do you do with that? And then, I kind of realized, there's sort of like orcs, for sure. Like, it's heavy infantry, punchy stuff. But they also have cool support options. Like some fast flying, shooty stuff with those scorch wings. Like, they do have interesting cavalry as well. They have good shooting, like some war machine, like I don't remember what it's called, but like they can do different things. And I think what really sold them to me in the end is they also have a reasonable amount of surge options. And I kind of wanted for my next army to do something with Surge, like to play with a different kind of movement. And after all, like Salamanders for me are orcs with some fast flyers and some Surge, and that's boom, bingo. That's exactly what I want to do. So yeah, I'm excited about them. I've never played with them. Like I built lists, but I couldn't try them on UB2 yet. So yeah, it'll be an interesting thing.
So I think it's a toolbox army, right? So it does a little bit of everything. As you say, Clem, it's got loads of surge, it's got shooting, it's got flying stuff. I actually think that by far the least interesting thing in the Salamanders army list are the Salamanders. Large infantry that hits on 4s, they're green, they're scaly, it's fine. But all the fire stuff is awesome, really exciting.
Yeah, it's true. It's when you look at them, you're like, oh, I probably should take a couple of hordes of something, like some heavy infantry hordes, but it's not so clear to me, like from a list building perspective. And also the interesting thing as well about them is you don't see them that often in events and tournaments, right? Like it's basically a bad army, so it's perfect for us to start with. Like no one won tournaments with Salamanders, I think. So it's great. I think it's just an open field, and people need to experiment with it. I don't know. I think it's going to be fun.
So, Clem, I think we're going to go through some kind of army list building stuff now, right? But before we do, I'm moving this from Pannithor lore to now, right? I'm going to describe to you the Salamander's lore in just a few sentences, right? Because I know you've not bothered to read the lore. I'm certain of it. So, Clem, the Salamanders live on Dinomonster Island. They hate evil. They enjoy sailing ships and enjoy bathing in volcanoes. They are really flamey. When they get old, the fire in them dies, just like us, and they become slow and rock hard. And that's why the Ancients are Speed 4 and Defense 6.
I mean, that's a cool summary of the lore. I like the
Mantic Games. I am available to write professionally.
To hire.
Yeah. Hire me to write all the lore. Kingdoms of Men.
They need to find someone else to find names, because I sure hope Dinomonster is not the thing.
No, Dinomonster Island is not the official name for it. Although Mantic did call the city Chill, so I wouldn't put it past them. Or the company is called Mantic, and they called the world Mantica. So maybe Dinomonster Island is a step up.
Yeah, who knows?
But does that lore make you even more excited to play Salamanders, Clem?
In a way, yes. I mean, I didn't realize they were so much about fire. I guess it makes sense when you look at the list options with all the fire elementals and stuff like the Phoenix, all this stuff like this. But yeah, it's interesting. I like the one paragraph lore, like a few sentences, and boom, you get really the essential aspects of the army. I think that's nice. For lazy people like me, it's better than like the 2 or 3 pages summary lore that exists in the rule books. So
yeah, and how do you feel about playing as a good army, like as in good aligned?
I mean, this good and bad isn't the thing. Like I'm sure they're just righteous assholes that burn everything down without thinking about nuances. Like
100%. They're only happy. They're like a pig in mud. They're if things aren't all on fire, they're going to be really sad. So yeah, of course, everything's burning down the whole time.
Yeah. So I think they're good, but just on paper, and I kind of like the idea that in a game of war, no one is actually the good guy. Like there's no good guy in war. In a way, it sounds more realistic to me. So
Clem, you've talked a little bit about your blog, which is not ready for human consumption yet. I've actually remembered to take some photos as I was doing stuff.
Nice.
So where actually are you? So we're going to talk about some lists in a second. Whereabouts are you in terms of ordering stuff? You know, you've got your stuff from your local friendly gaming store. How far into the project are you?
So I tried to come up with this so I can describe in a sec. My first version 0.1 list is like I bought more or less what I need to build this list with Mantic miniatures, and I haven't opened a single one of those boxes because that's not how I work. First, as you know, I need to figure out how I want to do the project. It took me a while to figure out my basing scheme, and from discussing with you that they're actually fire people. I decided to not go with the usual swamp or like jungle theme for the multi-bases, but more lava and like volcano style, sort of like what you did actually. And so I've built one multi-base and not so happy with the end result. I need to tweak my painting recipe a little bit. And once I'm happy with that, I will build all of my bases for the army. And then switch to do like test colors for some of the models. I know you don't believe in test models, but that's just how I work. I need to concentrate on the, so to speak, hard work of figuring out my color scheme, my recipe, and everything.
And everything else from there is easy.
Yeah, and once that is done, I can say, woohoo, that's a project completed or almost completed. The only thing left now is just sit down and do it. And so I'm still in the figuring it out part of it. But, so
I had one of the mini Forces of Nature Army boxes sitting on my shelf. I got it, to get the naiads out, and thought, well, I might do something with the other stuff. Got it for a decent price a couple of years ago. So I took them. I got the stuff that I bought off the guy on Facebook, and like you, Clem, I'm doing an all Mantic army. I then had a look through to see, because there's some the Mantic don't make specific models of, so it's kind of okay. What am I actually doing with these proxies? As you said, I did my bases. So I've done pretty much all the fire elements of my army. So whether it's the Phoenix, 2 hordes of fire elementals, I will be doing a 3rd horde of fire elementals. It's not in my army yet, but I've got the models. So I've pretty much done, and I've done 1 regiment of Salamander infantry. So right. I've done everything that wasn't my Mega Army box, basically. But we'll get to my list in a second. Clem, why don't you take us through your list 0.1 to give us an idea of what we're talking about here?
Right. So the list is basically trying to make use of what I mentioned earlier, like it's punchy, resilient orcs with some surgeable stuff and some fast stuff. And so the fast, flying, nimble, shooty, annoying stuff is 4 regiments of Scorchwings. I've given some items to 2 of them, but it's just like to spend points. I'm not sure it will be that useful. I gave the Blessing of the Gods, so elite, and the other one the Brew of Haste, so +1 movement. Kind of like thinking the Scorchwings are very weak, like they're 11, 13 or something, defense 4, I guess, I don't remember.
For the regiment, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they basically die as soon as you touch them. But they also have a shooting attack with range 18. They are speed 10, fly, nimble. They don't have that many attacks, but with fly and nimble, and you can really threaten to hop over your opponents and attack flanks and rears. I think it could work well. And to go along these guys, I also have the Skylord, so like the hero on the Scorchwing as well. And I gave him the Brutal, so the Pipes of Terror item. Again, I don't really know what I'm doing. It's just I needed to spend some points, and let's see how that will work. And then
Well, I think sorry, Clem. Just before you move on, I think that element of the army, you're right. It all dies really easily, but it's all really fast, and I think the Scorch Wings are nimble, right?
They are nimble, yeah.
So to have that much fast, nimble stuff that also has a shooting attack, I think a lot of armies are going to struggle to deal with that, or not know how to deal with that, because that's quite an interesting challenge, right? It's almost like having Silver Breeze or something.
I think so too.
Fly.
I mean, the reasonable thing is if you have some lightning bolts, you will destroy them.
Yeah, probably
like,
one per turn.
If you have two or three lightning bolt sources, you can reasonably destroy 2 or 3 of these Scorch Wings, like turn 1 or 2 almost. But that also means you have to focus on that stuff and not on the rest. And not all armies have, like shooty things like this. So, yeah, I'm curious to see how they actually behave on the table. And maybe the regiment is not the right angle, and I'll just play them as hordes to have a little bit more durability. But I have the impression that a speed 10 nimble, you just want to, fly nimble, you just want to, try to annoy your opponent and like put some pressure on them. Like sort of what the Soul Flayers are doing. Sure, at some point you might want to go in with them and actually try to do some damage. But what they do the best is threaten stuff. And almost like once you charge with them, it means it's game over sort of for you, or it means you've already done everything else you needed to, right? And so I expect these guys to work sort of the same, except they are even weaker and they have less of a punch. So, yeah.
I mean, they could do some damage, but I think you're right, Clem. Once you...
but they have what, 5 attacks? 6 attacks?
It's about...
Something very low.
Yeah. I mean, it's about the opportunity, really, isn't it? You're right, once you charge in, they'll die almost immediately, and kind of your trick is played out, right? So holding them back, and remember, of course, it is a scenario-based game. I mean, I don't even remember when I last played Kill, or I think I have played Kill, but it's definitely the weakest scenario for Kings of War. And having fly, nimble, scoring stuff can only be a good thing, right? With a shooting attack,
Yeah, they can always be helpful if they survive long enough. I think another issue with them is they have a pretty big footprint. I think they're on 50 by 50 bases.
That's correct, yes.
And I know from the Soul Flayers, which basically have the same base, this takes some space. So you really need to think about how you're going to deploy them. How you're going to position them so that they actually project an actual threat. But I guess with Scorch Wings being nimble, one of the basic play that you want to do is try to run forward and turn around to threaten rears and flanks, so that your opponents can decide either to just ignore you and move forward and then be charging the flank, maybe in the rear, which at some point will be hurtful, or then turn around and try to deal with them, and then the core of your army can move forward, and it's kind of like this kind of dual threat game. Let's see how it actually works. But the Scorch Rings are one big part of why I'm interested in them, in the salamanders. So
me too,
I want to try with a bunch of them. So yeah, then my second big element of the list is a punchy, surging Death Star, so to speak. So I guess it's similar to what you have. So I've taken a greater fire elemental, like insanely good profile, for not that much points either. And with that, 2 hordes of fire elementals, so it's technically also the punchy stuff. Relatively resilient. And stuff that you want to surge potentially. So to go with those guys, I have 2 priests with surge 8. So yeah, hopefully that's the thing that will let me learn how to play surge, or fail miserably while trying, but at least I'll have fun in the meantime. And then the third part of the army is kind of like a tough nuts to crack, like something that is made to stay on the table a bit longer and maybe score stuff. So I've taken a horde of ceremonial guards with the caterpillar and the effigy of fire. So reroll D3 or 3 once to wound or something like this, like to try to do some more damage. The ceremonial guards are pretty good. They're not cheap, 265, but yeah, they really look really nice on paper.
They're the defense 5 in snare guys, right?
I think they're phalanx, not in snare.
Oh, phalanx. Sorry, yeah, you're right. Phalanx. That's it.
Yeah. But defense 5, pretty high nerve. They also punch, like, I think they have like 30 attacks on 4s.
Yeah.
I want to say, and with some crushing, I think.
Yeah.
I think these will be sort of like a horde of orcs plus. So interesting to see what I can do with them. And then along those guys, I have taken 2 regiments of ancients. Now that I think about it, so defense 6, pretty slow, inspiring, blood crushing 2 or something. I wonder if I just want to take troops instead of regiments and save some of the points for something else. I don't know, maybe a second horde. I'm not sure. I need to play the list and see a bit how it goes. There's also a phoenix right there to try to support this tough nut to crack, like threaten flank or do some radiance of life to really make sure it's and also some heal. I think the phoenix has heal, or someone has heal.
Yes, it does. Heal 5, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's also the idea. Like you can't move those units away, and so that's I think quite a bunch of unit strengths that I think I should be able to keep for a quite long time and not get displaced by anything else. So that's kind of the idea.
And the Phoenix, I think, is one of my favourite Mantic models.
It is really nice. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I know it's heavily inspired, shall we say, by the old GW one, but it's magical. Yeah, it's great.
Maybe I don't remember the other one, but yeah, Mantic. That Mantic model is really nice.
Cool.
Yeah. So what about your list, Chris?
So I've done the same, Clem. So I've come up with 2,300 points. I know previously we discussed making a 1,000 point list, making a 1,500 point list, making a 2,000 point list, and running all through the.
Just to correct for the article, I also made a 1,500 point list. That is kind of a starter army list. I think it's a bit more balanced and a bit less crazy in what kind of stuff you need to buy. But I think for the show now and for our first Master of the Salamander battle that will happen at some point, I think we both agreed to do 2,300. So that's why I presented the 2,300 list that I'm starting with.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So, so I've got 26 unit strength and I've got 15 units. So I started off with, so I love ancients, right? So I've gone 2 regiments of ancients, one with the Mead of Madness, one with the Blessing of the Gods. They're not cheap, coming in at 200 points and 210 points respectively, and only
Madness
12
is
attacks.
Fury, right?
But that is the kind of the budget Blessing of the Gods, right? You're only paying 20 points, not 30. So
Right.
not many attacks, but a really lovely unit, and they at least hit on 3s. If it wasn't speed 4, oof. But yeah, an inspiring large base like that is going to be great, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's also going to be great for the Night Stalker players I play against. But Fearless 17, I really love that profile.
Defense 6 is huge as well.
Defense 6, exactly, as we said in our Pannithor. I've then gone for, and this is a bit wild card, so I've gone for 2 hordes of fire elementals, same as you, Clem. I've given 1 Blood of the Old King because I'm feeling cocky. So that's where it's a gamble unit, right? So you can.
It's the suicide thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
so
when you
it's
activate
15
it,
points.
Yeah.
When you activate it, you have to re-roll all 1s to hit and wound, but every dice that you re-rolled, you take a wound. yourself.
Yeah, that's the item that won games for my opponents a few times because I've used it poorly.
So I'm kind of thinking though, Clem, they're Fearless 17, and you'll see later I have a lot of heal in my list.
Right.
Obviously, that won't happen until later, so it's a risk. I have to survive a turn, but I'm gonna see.
Try it. I mean, it's fun. If anything, it's fun.
Exactly.
Every time I've played it, it's like, okay, I think I really need to secure this, and then I crack the item, and then I reroll a ton of things. I think one time I did like 10 damage total on my dragon. It's like, and that's how I killed my dragon. Like the next turn.
Perfect. But it's once per game, and I get to decide. I get to declare it. So it is. That is kind of a cool little mini game, right? Of when we'll unleash the blood of the
when are you gonna make your mistake? Like, are you waiting to turn 3 or 4 to make your mistake?
Yeah,
or are you more doing the mistake turn 1? Or I know.
Exactly. I've then got a regiment of tyrants, and actually, I think these are going to be really, really good. I've only gone for 3 because I've got 3 in the Mega Army box. Yeah. But I think these are really excellent. Speed 6, melee 4, defense 4, height 3, unit strength 2, 15 attacks, and fearless 14.
I couldn't really find them so interesting, right? Like hitting on 4s, defense 4.
Yeah, but 15 attacks for the regiment, the small size, crush 2, wild charge D3. So potentially you're charging 15 inches. Their height 3, they're probably going to get shot, but they are fearless 14 with a lot of. Let's see, Clem, because I really love the profile. I'll probably misuse them badly, as I often do, but let's see. And then, Clem, you've gone in for the Scorchwings, and they are beautiful Mantic models. I've just gone in for one Horde.
Right.
So, as Clem kind of said, speed 10, melee 3, which is super interesting, range 4, defense 4, height 4, so they will be a target, unit strength 3 on the Horde, 14 attacks, and they're 14-16 for 200 points, so that's kind of low nerve for that 200 points, but with Fly Nimble Pathfinder, so you're going to be hitting on 3s on the charge, and Thunderous Charge 1, so you're going to be getting that Thunderous Charge even if you're hindered, so, or generally speaking anyway. And they've got there, as you said, Clem, 18-inch attack with steady aim, and obviously steady aim is really, really important. I love that profile. Obviously, I'm going to misplay them, but it's just a really, really interesting unit. I've then got 2 regiments of Ember Sprites, and I'm using Mantic Zombies because I kind of thought I'll be honest, I had the Mantic Zombie models in a box, but I was kind of thinking, so these are kind of like spirits raised out of the lava, right? They're kind of like they're almost the same as a fire elemental, right? They're like a construct that's been created, and I'm kind of imagining that my mage priests have been, off of Dinomonster Island, and they've seen the humans, and they kind of don't really like them very much, and they kind of imagine the humans as, these kind of shambling. Yeah, that was kind of my mental logic for what they're doing, if that makes sense. But these, I think these really
makes sense. Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
I like what you've done. I mean, I've seen the models. I think you've posted pictures on the Facebook group, right?
Yep.
Thanks, it completely fits the theme and everything, and they look great.
Cool.
And I can completely see what you just described.
Thanks, buddy.
I think it's a smart way to do that.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. So I've got 2 regiments of them, and as a Trident Realms player with Tidal Swarms, I very much like this profile. So they are speed 6, melee 5, no one cares about that, range 4, defense 3, which compared to Tidal Swarms is amazing, height 1, unit strength 1, 7 attacks, and they're fearless 11, and they're 80 points. I think my Tidal Swarms were fearless 12, but still. And they've got Scout, Shambling, Vicious, and they've got Shooting Attack, which actually, it's a 12-inch attack, 7 attacks, hitting on 4s. I mean, I really, really actually love this profile for chaff.
It sounds pretty nice, yeah.
Scout, I mean, I tend not to use it so much because on my tidal swarms they'll get shot off really easily. But it does allow you for little tricks, so you can use the scout to kind of move in front of a different unit or something like that. Just not necessarily scout forward, but just move sideways. Even like it's cool to have. I wouldn't overuse it. The shambling means theoretically they could be surged, which is no terrible thing. Vicious, why not? And I kind of just think the flame attack, they're going to be facing off against other chaff, and just doing a couple of attacks into, a tidal swarms, let's say, would actually be really horrible for them. Putting a couple of wounds on them, giving them a nerve roll. Probably it won't do anything, but every now and again it might waver the opponent's chaff, then they're stuck. Yes, it's more likely it doesn't happen, but sometimes it will do that,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really, really nice profile. Really, it's a good contestant for the best chaff. Let's see in game. But you convinced me. I mean, I've seen chaff units like this do so much in so many games already that for me it's a given that yes, they really are a nice tool to have in your list. Like the snow foxes or the woodland critters, the tidal swarms as well. I mean, I've seen them also with Empire of Dust. I think they have one. This
Scarab swarms or something. Yeah,
like something like the hate
beetle
one
swarms. Yeah,
tiny swarm kind of unit. They always do interesting stuff. So yeah,
and of course the height 1 thing's important because it means your stuff behind can see over it, right? So you're not, and you're fearless, so you're not going to be blocking your own charges on your turn.
Yeah, and also height 1, so you can see over them, but you still provide cover. It's great.
Really, really good. I know things like gargoyles and harpies are amazing as well, but it's just a totally different type of chaff, right? You're using that in a completely different way.
It is. It's a different stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about those, even though they're the chaff. Next is the Phoenix, and funnily enough, Clem, I saw just a couple of weeks ago as we were kind of planning our lists, someone had posted on the Kings of War Fanatics. They wanted to offer units that basically aren't very good and need to be improved. And the first one they offered as a sort of proof of concept was the Phoenix, and said, it's just not good enough. The height 4 means it gets the height 6 means it gets shot. But I actually really, really like this unit. I mean, I know we're not exactly the most competitive gamers in the world, but I just think it's a really, really cool, beautiful model and a cool toolkit kind of a unit. So it's speed 10, melee 3, no ranged attack, defense 3, okay, that's not great. Height 6, unit strength 1, 5 attacks, 1460 nerve, okay, that's a bit low, and 195 points. But it comes with Crush 1, Fly, Nimble, Radiance of Life, which actually can be very useful, Regen 4+, and then it's got Fireball 10 and Heal 5. And I was wondering the keywords. Flamebound, that makes sense. And Majestic. I wonder where that Majestic word is going later, that keyword. But, I mean, heal 5, you're probably healing 2 wounds around, let's say 2 wounds a turn on average. But with it has regen on itself and the Radiance of Life. Yeah, it's not great at any of the things it does. But it can still do a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, I think it could be tweaked either to make it a bit more threatening in melee.
Yeah, could do with a couple of extra
melee
attacks.
3-5 attacks is kind of like, what are you gonna do with it? Give it 7 attacks.
1. Yeah, 7 attacks, Thunder 1 would make a huge difference.
Yeah, like a Beast of Nature or something.
Yeah.
And then now we're talking. Or push it the other way around, like really as a support character, like put it back to melee, 1 attack or 2 attacks, or doesn't matter how many attacks,
7.
and just like a Radiance of Life heal platform, right? Or
That's how I'd like to go with it, because as you said, Clem, like Beast of Nature, that already exists in tons of lists. It feels like there's loads of similar units, whereas I feel like actually with the healing stuff, this is actually fairly unique. Particularly on the Titan base, it's interesting, and I think if you just turn that into a Beast of Nature with wings, it's less interesting, albeit a beautiful model. But anyway.
I mean, Beast of Nature are really nice in lists, so that could be nice to have the option. But I agree, or maybe give it a nice aura, like a wild charge aura. Doesn't it have something like this? Oh no, it's the fire elemental.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't. Like really make it a nice support character. So heal, less attacks, and then cheaper, maybe more heal, or other protective spells like this. I don't know. It's something to make here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, actually, because it's on the Titan base, and because it's such a huge, beautiful model, I'd rather they kind of really ramped it up a little bit, but, kept it expensive or even made it more expensive. I feel like it should be a bit more of a wow piece,
Yeah, like a real tough support character, like a sort of central on one flank of your army character. I mean, to be honest, even if it sucks, I don't care. It's in my list because I love the model. And
me too. Yeah, that was exactly
it's in my list anyway, so it doesn't matter, right?
It's not going anywhere. Yeah, exactly, buddy. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's going in the list. Cool. As super competitive as we are.
Yeah.
So next up, Clem, I've got a Mage Priest with Surge 8, exactly the same as you.
Yeah.
And I also gave that Hex, because why not? Yeah.
All right.
Because 15 points. I've then got another Mage Priest with replacing Fireball with Surge, exactly as you have. And then I've given that one Shroud of the Saint.
So that's the...
Plus heal 3.
Right, okay. Yeah, I thought it was the Veil of Shadows, the stuff that keeps you stealthy, but no.
That would also be interesting, to be honest. But it's the heal one.
Right.
And then, leading into that, I've got another Mage Priest.
Wow, okay.
With Surge 8, Spellcast tier +1, and then Celestial Restoration. So I've got 3 healing things, and I've completely forgotten what this does at this point, but I've gone for the formation, the Whispering Scales, and I've got to be honest, unless I actively thought a formation was terrible at this point, I think the idea of formations is cool, so, I'm doing it. I've completely forgotten what it does, and unfortunately my list is not telling me.
I don't remember. I think it gives a wild charge and elite to some salamanders.
There we go. Yes, you're exactly right. No, sorry, it does actually in the unit profile. You're exactly right. So I've got 2 regiments of salamander primes in this formation. So they are
plus
speed 5, melee 4, defense 5, height 2, unit strength 3, 12 attacks, 14, 16, 145 points. Crush 1, scout, stealthy. Maybe it is stealthy actually. 2 of those. Kind of useful, 145 points, not too bad, not great nerve, only 12 attacks, hitting on 4s. I mean, what do you think that's going to do, Clem, on average? So melee 4, hitting with 12 attacks, you're probably going to do, what do you reckon, about 3 or 4 wounds on most things? Say on a defense 5 thing, 3 or 4 wounds a turn in combat?
Maybe, I mean, the 12 attacks, the thing is... it can be swingy, like
hitting on 4s it feels very swingy. So let's say
you can get good surprises.
You get six through, and then hitting on, and then let's assume they're defense 5, so hitting on 4s again. So you're going to be doing about 3 wounds on average per turn. It's not exactly Rift Forge Orcs levels of wounds, is it? But never mind.
No, but it's a different
unit, I think. It's a different, it's a totally different
like...
army style. Yeah. And then to round off the list, in the formation, I've got the Battle Captain. So he is a cheap little hero. Speed 5, melee 3, defense 5, height 2, no unit strength, which is a shame, and 3 attacks, 11, 13, so low nerve. But he's only 70 points. But he's got some cool special rules. So he's got a Pathfinder aura, which is cool.
Yeah, that's
an
what it was.
elite aura for the Whispering Scales. Okay, well that's going to push you up a little bit on the damage output. Crush 2, individual and inspiring, and Path of Fire 1. And for the life, I did end up looking this up, and I can't for the life of me remember what Path of Fire does. Yeah, I really don't remember what that did. I ended up looking it up at some point, and I've forgotten again by the time we've come to recording this. Apologies, dear listener.
Well, that's
and
life.
Of course, it's not listed.
I mean, if you're on Easy Army, if you click View and you check the PDF, then you would see it, I think.
It's not listed.
Really?
Yeah, it's not listed.
No, that's weird. I thought you had it in... if you're on the PDF view from Easy Army. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm in it. It's not listed. I did, like 3 weeks ago or whatever, when we were planning this out, I did actually realise that I wasn't sure what that did. Look it up. Go, oh, okay. So dear listener, please tell us on Facebook what that does. That in our Facebook group, that'd be very
that would change your decision for the list as well. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like in the end, we have a very similar list. I feel
a few different units, but it's a similar kind of a style. I've got a lot more heal in my list. You've got a lot more kind of flying elements in the list,
right? Yeah,
but fundamentally, I think we're trying to do similar things. But it's both lists just sound really fun to play, which is the most important thing, right?
Yeah, I think so too. It'll be interesting to see how they actually do on the table. Because you can always make big plans in your head, like, this will go this way and this will go that way, and then it absolutely doesn't happen. It doesn't work like this. But at least I'm having fun writing the list, so that's a good start.
Yeah, do you remember Rob on when he came on the podcast in episode 3, dear listener? If you've not heard it yet, definitely go and check that out. That was a great episode, except for my terrible sound record quality. It's a great episode. Go and listen to it. Rob was saying to us, he was talking about his ogres, and he said, no, you can't win with high defense armies. There's just too much crush strength in the list. So when it came to planning my salamanders, that for whatever reason that did stick in my head a little bit. So it was kind of like a hold my beer moment a little bit. So I very much want to go for the traditional grind heal list, because my Trident Realms kind of does it, but it does it in a really weird Trident Realms way, right? Yeah. Whereas this is doing it with high defense stuff, no tricks really, just high defense stuff and a load of heal. And maybe it doesn't work, and I'm sure Rob's right, but I want to give it a go because I just think that would be fun.
I mean, it sounds interesting. I've played against Basilian's list that do this and did it well. Empire of Dust also obviously can do that very well. And when it works, it's really soul-crushing for your opponent. Because you think you did damage to it, and you're going to pop stuff, and then nope, and then it heals everything, and then you get back to square one. So, when it works, it's really strong. So, let's see.
Nice. So I think this month I'll almost certainly finish my Salamander's army and just get it done. And then we've already made plans, Clem, to fight these two Salamander's armies against each other.
Yeah, I mean, so we didn't clarify so much what the challenge is with these armies, right? I think it's kind of like also I have a fun project with a good friend, and it's kind of like the bad influence that you have on me, purchase-wise.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, absolutely. That's a dangerous thing. But the idea is definitely have fun building and painting our armies in parallel. You'll be faster than I am. That's how things are. That's it. We'll post some pictures on the Facebook group and organize a game probably sometime in October when we meet up next. And see how it goes. And I think it will also be interesting to chat on the pod right here about us getting started with this army, because up until 2 months ago I never thought I would play salamanders, and I had zero idea, never played against them, had zero idea about them. I think you're pretty much the same, and so I think it's a good excuse to tell nice stories and share our new experiences with this army. So I guess that's the plan going forward.
Yeah, funnily enough, there's a really, really lovely guy called Zach in Reno, and we kind of chat every now and again because we were both Trident Realms players. When Salamanders came out, and he's a really good player, like he's kind of top end tournaments kind of thing, and really, really super guy. And so when Salamanders came out last year, he was really trying to talk me into it, and I was like, I don't know, big bases hitting on fours doesn't sound that cool. Really like the models, but he didn't manage to talk me into it. But yeah, I'm in, and I'm happy to be here, Clem. It's cool. I love it. It's such a toolbox army, all the things we've discussed. At some point, I will have to do Dinosaur Pirates because, they're not... It's interesting they're not in either of our lists, actually, but that's just the way it's gone.
Right.
And Clem, you'll have to share pictures on the Facebook group of your formula,
Yeah, I'm not
just
sure
make it a bit
what
more interactive,
I'll
I think.
make.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which one I'll make for the Salamanders, because obviously my Forces of the Abyss and also my Khorne army for that other systems is a fire themed stuff. So I haven't decided yet if I do exactly the same fires to kind of like, who knows, maybe I want to play them together or against each other, or if I just try to come up with a different recipe for it. But sure, that's a key element of such an army.
So
yeah.
What I did actually with my fire, so I painted my bases and loads of fire elements in the army. Really, so I based them white, which is unusual. I normally go for black, but obviously you want to maintain keep as much of the colour as you can with this, right? Then I painted them really, really bright yellow, like hurt your eyes kind of yellow, and I even used a bit of acrylic. Acrylic yellow, just to get it to pop as much as I possibly could. And then basically, to be honest, it was really easy, really fun, really quick. And that the way I did it was just dry brushing them slightly darker colours, so you'd go, I went a slightly darker yellow, then I went kind of a light orange, then a heavier orange, all the way up to red, then eventually dry brush with a tiny bit, and every time you do it with a tiny bit less paint, right? And then at the end, just a tiny bit of black or, dark grey kind of thing to give them a kind of sooty look. But just a tiny bit of each. So every time you do a level, you're using a bit less paint. That's really, really important. So by the time you're doing the red and the black, you're just doing a little tiny bit. But yeah, and funnily enough, Clem, as we talked about before, I thought, okay, well, that's easy. I know exactly what I'm doing with that. If I look at my models, I know exactly which ones I did when, because they all look, the different phases of the project look slightly different. There's a slight, there is a slight difference to it, whether I want it to be or not. But I'm happy. I think it looks great. I mean, considering how quick and easy it was to do that, I'm super, super happy with the effect I've got. And funnily enough, actually, the Phoenix model I bought that probably about 3 years ago when I went to Firestorm Games for an AOS event, I think. But I just started to get into Kings of War at that point, and I just bought the model because it's a beautiful model, and I wanted something to kind of remember the trip from, if that made sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it's kind of like, hey,
you mean
cool.
like a trophy, like a first place trophy at the tournament?
I think we both know the answer to that question. Clem.
Yeah, I mean,
I've won
easy.
most fun to play with. I've won most fun to play with tournaments. I came second in an AOS painting tournament, but I did win. I have won a best painted in a Kings of War tournament, as I discussed previously on the pod, and basically said that was nonsense. I was never the best painted in that tournament, but I have the medal. I have the trophy to prove that says I did, and I'm really, really happy to win one of those. To be honest, even though I think it was a little bit dodgy.
Hey, I was just teasing you. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all, buddy. Go for it.
No, it was just to tease you about the Phoenix, but yeah, I completely understand the bringing back some trophy, like some memory from the event, and it's a good model to do exactly that. Like, if you can find an excuse to get it, I think it's worth it. It's a cool model.
Yeah, definitely, buddy. Cool. So that's our salamanders. So we'll have more updates for next month as we're working through this. And hopefully soon, Clem, we've got some, like a battle report to give of, and I have been thinking a little bit as well of like, why are the salamanders fighting amongst each other? Because I guess we're all flamey bases, so I guess we're on Fire Dino Monster Island.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so many reasons that you can have infighting, right? But
I was kind of thinking maybe somehow your forces of the abyss are behind us, like behind this. They've kind of tricked us into fighting each other because of their sinister machinations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously you're the bad guy. And
what? Because your abyssal forces are evil? Yeah. Well.
No, because obviously I'm right, and I know the truth, and I fight for the righteous cause and everything.
Us in this volcano want to declare a new Dino Monster King on Monster Dino Island. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something
cool.
like this.
We'll get there, buddy. We'll get there. I think it's fair to say whatever fluff we come up with, no matter how childish, it will be extremely fun. Extremely fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good excuse to figure out, like, whatever scenario we play first, we'll get a slightly better taste, like added delicacy of, hey, there's actually a reason why these guys fight. And then no matter what the dice or the bad decisions, like the bad strategic decisions we make, we can still tell a cool story from it. So yeah, I think it will be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the most important thing is it's 100% guarantee of fun times. And that's. I mean, let's be honest, that's all that matters, right?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, for me, once I get through my initial hardship of figuring out my paint job, like my paint scheme and everything, after that, yep, it's gonna be nice.
Fun and easy to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really cool. Cool. Right, are we happy to move on to our new section, new exciting segment, Clem?
Absolutely. I mean, you came up with a nice name for it, so we have to get to it at some point. So let's get cracking.
So our next segment is called Pannithor. You see what I've done there? Eh? Yeah. So we're setting ourselves... So one of the things that Clem and I complain about is there's not enough lore, right? And then we think amongst ourselves and we go, well, I'll be honest, we don't really read the lore that's there. So we've set ourselves a challenge of reading some of the lore every month and then just, talk about it a little bit on the pod. Yeah. That makes sense, right, Clem? And we can.
Yeah, I think it's a good excuse. Kind of also try to get more into all of the universe, and sort of put our money where our mouth are. Like, okay, we say, it's good to have more lore for your games, and then we don't read the one that exists. It's kind of like sounds stupid.
Exactly.
So we can change. We can change that, and we'll try to change that.
Exactly,
so,
right?
Yeah.
So we want to be part of the change we want to see in the world, right, Clem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was fair. That was 100% fair, that reaction. Cool. So this month, Clem, so we're starting off. So we have read the background lore in the core Firefight rulebook, and we have also read the plague lore in the army list, right?
Right, yep. Absolutely.
So, okay, right. So, shall I just start explaining stuff, and you just jump in when I get things wrong, and then we'll have a little talk about what it all means.
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah, we can approach it this way, and we can discuss it afterward as well, or along the way. Yeah, but sure, go ahead.
Right, exactly. Right. So, GCBS. So we're in the far future, right? So. Humans don't have countries anymore, right? They've sort of moved past that. It's all corporations and corporate greed, and that's really what's driving the humans forward into space, right? So they've pushed out into the galaxy, and it's really just kind of a stampede to get resources, right? Everyone's competing with each other to get stuff, and, now we're off of Earth. There's a whole galaxy's worth of stuff that we can get our hands on, right? So the human area, it's known as the Galactic Prosperity Sphere. That's the sort of euphemism for this kind of very greedy form of rule, shall we say, and form of society. So,
And therefore GCPS.
Say again, buddy.
And therefore GCPS.
And therefore GCPS, right, exactly. Thank you, buddy. So, as the humans have spread out over the galaxy, they've moved out from Earth into sort of almost like the rings of a tree. So, the first sphere, as it's known, are Earth and the solar systems which are closest to Earth. And at this point, they're really, really nice. They're kind of utopian cities. There's great healthcare. Yeah, it's a bit more sinister under the surface, but basically they're super developed, really modern, chic, slick. You know, beautiful parks, beautiful high-rise glass buildings. For most people, everything's great as long as you've got money, right? You've got a nice life there, right?
Yeah, like your soul belongs to the corporation, but at least you get a nice screen and a nice elevator to your building and a nice commute to work, I guess, or something like this.
Exactly, right? But actually, yes, I mean, there's kind of sinister undertones to the corporate thing, but actually a lot of people have a nice life. I mean, there's obviously kind of an underclass of people who have to do the jobs other people don't want to do, and there's kind of... It's not a fair society, it's fair to say, but most people have a really nice life and, you know, they've got good education and stuff like this, right?
Yeah, I mean, from what I read, at least what I remember, in the first sphere, so the core of the galaxy, or like the human area, it's kind of like a nice place to be in, sort of, so to speak. It's quite organized, like the whole planets are like colonized by human life and so on, and like mega cities and stuff like this. At least that's my understanding of stuff here.
So if you could imagine the Star Trek universe, except instead of this lovely, you know, sort of fair society, everything's ruled by McDonald's. That's kind of where we are, right? So there are the sinister undertones. So once humanity, so the first sphere kind of happened, and then if I'm remembering this right, they were developing the second sphere and pushing out in all directions. At that point, it was actually quite bloody and cutthroat. So effectively, the 7 largest corporations all got together and formed an oligarchy and basically said, well, I tell you what, let's kind of carve up the galaxies and where we're all pushing into amongst ourselves. You know, we'll get most of the metaphorical pie, and, you know, we'll just... between ourselves, we'll control stuff. So they formed this kind of shadowy council, which are now known as the Council of Seven. And things became quite a bit more orderly. So it seems like the 7 corporations, they still screw each other over, but at least they have to do it kind of secretly. It's more kind of corporate espionage and kind of like special forces teams. It's not openly murdering each other, you know, in the Wild West.
They're not openly at war, and also like the council does have some power to just come in and kick everyone's butt if 2 corporations start to misbehave.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And at this point, actually, I was thinking, Clem, to be honest, thinking about it, I'd love to see more kind of sub-factions for the GCPS. You know, so I was thinking today, well, what if there was a corporation that focuses a lot on hacking technology or cybernetic mods, or... Yeah. It would be awesome if there was, you know, actually the different corporations had some kind of, you know, so just lots of flavor,
more specialties,
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That sounds about right. Like a bit more specialties for various factions within the GCPS.
Yeah.
I mean, we know of Mason Labs, right?
Yes.
It's not a huge corporation, from what I understand. Like, it's not on the level of one of the 7. But I mean, I think everyone can see that with a bit more identity, with like Mason Labs, you get cool stuff, and so there's probably potential for GCPS. Who knows, to have some special units depending on the faction, or like special orders.
Because I thought at that point you could have special units in Firefight from the different corporations, right? Because theoretically they could all, and they do all work together, right? And I was thinking as well, like, you know, if we think about like the pilgrims who left, you know, places like the UK, etc., and founded the New World. Well, presumably there'd be a load of that going on. Like maybe there's religious persecution, like who knows, maybe there's a cult who think they can upload their soul into a toaster. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's potential.
And
I think.
Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was pretty much it, buddy. Go for it.
No, I think maybe one explanation why GCPS is kind of uniform like it is to try to push on the idea that all those corporations basically are the same, just greedy, faceless entity.
Yeah.
That spreads over several planets or several systems. So maybe in a way it sort of makes sense that GCPS has lots of standard issue, all with the same equipment stuff. But I'm sure if flesh out the fluff a bit further, like tell us about some of the fights between those 7 huge corporations, or maybe some identities, or like some defining elements between them. I think there's potential.
Just even things like just having heroes for the different 7, or just having like just a couple of name characters would make a big difference, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, like again, it's all about trying to come up with excuses for fights, right? So
right, exactly.
That's what it is. Like provide some background for games that you will play later. And so anything that you can add on top of it to flesh it out is good to take, because I mean you still have a lot to go through, but overall for me the whole universe is kind of like, well, there's the greedy corporations, and then one day there was the plague, and that's about it, right? Like that's my 2-sentence summary of the whole fluff, so to speak. And it's great. I think it's a very interesting starting point, and I like that it's not maybe entirely unique, but it is kind of on its own, right? Like it's not, oh yeah, it's Star Wars with different names, or oh yeah, it's 40K with different names, or
I agree.
It's not Foundation with different names, or it's not whatever other big franchise that everyone knows. So they are doing their own thing, which I really like about it. They have a pretty basic set environment now, and I think there's a lot of potential to add on top of it. So anyway, I interrupted you basically in the middle of your explanation.
No, I think that's a really good point. And to be honest, buddy, we've got another hour left and we've got loads of stuff to talk about. So I think you make a good point about skipping through it. There was something called the Mandrake Rebellion, which was a bit of corporate shenanigans that led to Marauders rebelling, which was kind of their excuse to roll out the Enforcers, which was it was a kind of a shadowy espionage scheme by some of the Council of 7 to roll out Enforcers. That's where Enforcers came from. That was called Project Ishiban. So now that kind of brings us up to where we are now. We're in the 5th sphere, so we've grown out 5 expansions.
Maybe just sorry to interrupt again, but that reminds me of an interesting thing I remember from the fluff, which is basically humanity encountered tons of aliens.
Yeah.
Right, and so the Mandrake Rebellion is Marauders.
Correct. Who were basically
mercenaries, like fighters, but sort of integrated, kind of dominated, but sort of integrated still within the galaxy, like the GCPS. And they got screwed over, like in between, like inside a big political play, blah 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 blah, and rebelled and got crushed almost entirely. But my point was, so there are tons of aliens in the galaxy. Like it's not just humans and corporations. It's also corporations, like human corporations going in various star systems and encountering aliens and just integrating them in the profit system one way or another.
Yeah, that's completely right. Yes. So I mean, there will be aliens in the GCPS. A good example is the Nameless.
Right.
Because they were kind of incorporated in, and they've been screwed by rampant capitalism and that. So they're almost rebelling at the moment, basically, or some of them are rebelling. Yeah,
but also like the Terratons, right?
Yeah.
The big crocodile dudes that I think you can play them with GCPS as well. Because I had them in Plague for sure, but I think they do also exist in GCPS armies. But so yeah, I mean, there is potential in this universe for tons of cool aliens of various sorts, and
various factions with various different motivations. Yeah, me too. As you said, Clem, it's a really, really good starting point for telling cool stories with this. And there's so much space for us to maneuver to tell our own. It's really, really cool.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping for, like Blade Runner-esque human androids. I mean, there's so many different opportunities.
Right.
So yeah, anyway, that takes us on to, as you said, Clem, the coolest thing in the lore, which is the plague. It just is, to me, the best thing in the lore and the most unique thing, I kind of think. Yeah. So the humans came near Asterian space, basically, and an area of space, so some star systems, now colourfully known as the Death Arc, but presumably at the time were known as, Project New Hope or something. The Asterians, to their credit, sort of tried to warn the humans off and don't go near that bit of space. So there's all these old... these planets with these old civilizations which have been abandoned, and I love that idea, right? I think that's super, super cool. Mm-hmm. So basically there are these old, ancient, mostly buried objects, and basically the humans go near them. An ancient bioweapon thing that we don't quite understand, because I don't think Mantic quite know where they want to go with this, possibly created by the Asterians, almost certainly created by the Asterians, comes out, infects people.
Are you sure it's created by Asterians? I thought it was potentially by their enemies that they.
That's possible too, Clem. Yeah, that's entirely possible.
Clem mentioned, because from what I remember, the Asterians hate the plague.
They do.
But we don't really know. Is it we hate it because it's like our puppet that escaped our control, or do they hate it because it's like the leftover from an enemy that they defeated a long time ago? That part was not so explicitly.
No, but I like it's ambiguous. And if you think about it, Clem, most of the Asterian units are robots, right?
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense because they can't be infected by the plague, right?
Yeah, but you don't know if it's they came to this because a few millennia ago they were fighting against something else that created the plague.
Yeah.
And they created robots, and then plague can't do anything about robots, and then they won. But there's still kind of tons of bioweapons littered, like you find mines in the border between France and Germany, even today, right?
Exactly. So it might be, you're exactly right, Clem. And the way you're explaining it, maybe you're right, maybe it's more likely it's the second one. But so it could be either the Asterians created this by mistake, or it was a bioweapon they used on their enemies,
right?
Or they were fighting against another civilization. And that's why these planets were all abandoned. Maybe it was that was literally the civilization who were the enemies of the Asterians.
Yeah.
Who were now destroyed, and the Asterians said, "Well, don't go near there," and humans didn't listen. Either way, I'm into it.
Or maybe, yeah, me too. Or maybe it's the Asterians. The plague isn't that old at all, and it's just that's the Asterians' way to kind of get back to the humans. Because without the plague, Asterians are kind of fucked against the humans, right? And if you look at the big picture from the fluff, it's kind of take today's world and imagine everything goes well, there's no issue with climate and everything, and we manage to go to tons of planets, and just corporations take over and nothing stops them, right? That's the impression that I get from the fluff. It's just take 2-day society and turn it to 11 in a way, corporations, blah blah blah, and nothing stops them until the plague.
The only thing that can stop them is zombies. George Romero made all those films where zombies. It's a metaphor for capitalism. So the Asterians know this, and they know that's the only way to defeat the humans and their horrible hypercapitalism is by creating a horrible parody of hypercapitalism. Right.
Maybe it's something like this. Who knows? I don't think Asterians are the good guys or friends of humans at all.
Oh no, they're not the good guys. They're not the good guys
at all. And I think there's also tons of cool stuff that could happen with the Asterians, and whatever happens in the Death Arc, and Yeah, I think there are also nice stories to tell about the GCPS being confronted with the Death Arc, and just going like head first against it, like, oh, I don't give a shit, I'm still here for profit anyway. I mean, in a way, it's also funny to think they wrote this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, after the past 2 years that we've had. Like, I don't know, it was funny to read all of that, like the plague stopping the hyper capitalistic expense was kind of a fun thing to read about.
I dig the lore. Yeah, I like it until we get to the plague, and then I love it. I get really excited about this stuff. This is super cool. So Clem and I will do basically a gaming weekend in October, and we've read Nexus Sci, which is its second edition, so the rules no longer valid, but we are really putting a lot of thought into building our lore for our gaming weekend, right? Of just trying to tell some of these stories.
Yeah, I think that adds a really cool dimension to games, and then no matter what happens, like if you win or lose, it matters even less than when you play a stand-up pickup game, because in the end you just it's just a cool story, right? Like it's like when you watch a movie, it doesn't really matter who wins in the movie, sort of. It's like if it's a cool story.
That's exactly right, buddy. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Nice,
the dice will make the
feel.
decisions for us, and the plot beats.
But
I'm super excited about that. So, Clem, anything? Just because we've got a lot to cover still, anything you want to just to sum up the Pannithor section?
Not really. I mean, we need to decide what we read next time, but I think it's interesting to have a look at this. To be honest, a lot of the fluff was, but that's also maybe how I think about things. Like, okay, you've given me 10 pages, it could have been 1 page. It would have been the same for me, at least. I don't know, like, it's nice that it leaves a lot of doors open, but yeah, I think there's a lot of potential, and it's up to us to write cool stories in there, and I hope they will also write some, like, cool novels. Give me audiobooks that I can listen to while I paint and stuff like this. So yeah, that's my take on fluff after having read more fluff than ever in the past couple of weeks. So yeah.
But I think we always intended to use it as a jumping off point for our stories, right? We're doing at least half the work here, but there's a lot of interesting hooks I really like. And there was just one other thing that we didn't mention, Clem, was like, partly because of the GCPS is expanding so quickly and breathlessly. As you said, there's kind of this whole alien civilizations with it now within GCPS borders that don't know they're within GCS borders, or they're hiding and they haven't been found yet. So there's this whole kind of like class of human or whatever within the GCPS whose job is to kind of, they're like treasure hunters going and exploring these planets or these systems. And oh boy, that would make for a good dungeon crawler.
Right,
I would love that.
Potential.
Boy,
there's tons of cool stories to tell, and for sure, I like that it's sort of it's unique. Like I don't feel like it's Star Wars or it's Star Trek or
100%.
It's this or that.
100%.
This part I think is really valuable.
And there's a lot of great hooks in there. Right, Clem, we'll figure out what we're going to read later, dear listener, and there will be more Pannithor next episode. So, Clem, I'm just going to run through this really quickly because we're pushed for time, as always. So, the next segment, Kings of War Champions, right? So, this, I haven't done any work on this at all because there's not enough time in the day, right? So, I'm calling this Champions. We talked previously about Kings of War Vanguard, but Deadzone, right? I don't want to step on anyone's toes, so I'm not calling it Vanguard 2.0 because I don't want this necessarily to replace anything. If people are happy playing Vanguard, please keep playing Vanguard. I'm glad you're happy. So the basic premise of this, Clem, is you take the heroes from Kings of War, like the individually based models, and you play Fantasy Deadzone with them, right? So I'm going to take my Salamanders, or I'm going to take my Northern Alliance. I'm going to take one of my Mantic armies, Riftforge Orcs, take the heroes, that's my warband, and I'm going to do some testing and see if I can, make it more of a thing than it already is, which is just a very, very vague idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I've said enough. I love Vanguard, but there's space for something else. I mean, Deadzone, huge advantage is the small board and like sort of easygoing rules. I think it could be even easier. Like, I love Warcry, for example. It's not Mantic, but I can say it, I guess. It's a bit shallow, but you play on a very small board. You need a handful of miniatures, and boom, 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 you can teach a game while you played your first game, and that's it. And I think we could get something like this in Pannithor, for sure. So,
yep. And part of the reason I'm saying you just take the heroes, the pre-existing heroes in Kings of War is, if you go to a Kings of War tournament, let's say, Friday night, you just take your heroes out of your box, and you've got almost everything you need to play just a game of champions, as I'm calling it, right?
Yeah.
It's good to go, and that's very much not the case with Vanguard, right? So I want it to kind of complement what already exists. But anyway, I've hardly done anything on it. Kings of War Champions, it's 100% unofficial, but we're making it a thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the main question or the main difficult thing for a fantasy game like this when you think about Deadzone is terrain will be a pain in the ass, right? Like, what kind of terrain do you plan to use, and how do you make it interesting to play within? Like, is it in a cave system or inside a tavern, or I don't know? Like, terrain, I think is a challenging element.
So I'm very much imagining it in a kind of, I mean, the answer is it could be anything, right? But I'm very much imagining it as a starter in being like I'd love it. Let's say the way I'm imagining it, Mantic put out a box set, as they do now with like Firefight, or the best example is Deadzone, right? So let's say that Deadzone box set, Kings of War Champions. It's got some terrain, which is basically a destroyed town. I'll be honest. I'm almost entirely ripping off what was Fantasy Necromunda called?
Mordheim.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the starting point, buddy. A destroyed brick medieval town / city. That's the starting point.
Yeah. Okay, but it's hard to make, like, from a practical perspective, right? Like the sci-fi terrain for Deadzone is just genius, because it's relatively easy to build and assemble and gives you a super interesting gameplay. Mordheim tables, I think, are very hard to... I'm not saying it's not feasible. I would love to have something like this and to make it happen. I think this is one big challenge that we need to solve to experiment with this game.
I see what you're saying. I think it's totally... I think it's completely overcomeable, that issue. I think you could come up with beautiful... square, brick medieval buildings where, obviously a cannon is shot through, big windows, so you can scamper through and line of sight and all the rest of it. Cool. But, we can talk about all that's come. We don't have so much time on this pod, so let's move on and save that conversation for another day, but I get where you're coming from.
Sure.
Cool. So, next segment. So this is topic of the month. Kings of War 4th edition, what we want. So there's obviously just not enough gas in the explosion of changes to Kings of War. So we've approached this, so it's very on topic. Erasmus Berger asked us, but already I've been chatting to Matt Croger about this. So this is kind of talking about the different armies in Kings of War, where they all fit. Take it from there.
It's more about the universe as well, right? Because when I think about it, all of the things that we came up with, like we've listed for 4th edition, not a single item is about the rules. Not a single one. Like, the only thing we've done is more think about, okay, what are the armies? What do we want to do with it? What's the universe? What's the lore? In what direction do we want to push this? How should Mantic deal with Pannithor? And what do we want to see happen in there?
So, when I got my Riftforged Orcs army, I was so disappointed when it said Riftforged Orcs are a theme list of orcs. And it was like, oh, that's so... Like, I don't like the idea of it to start with, and then it's just such an incredibly unappetizing, uninspiring way. A theme list. Like, it's almost like they put that in as a placeholder, and then they didn't bother to come up with something that sounded cooler. Do you know what I mean? They didn't bother to hide the strings of the puppet a little bit, you know? Sorry, Clement, I interrupted you.
No, that's true. No. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, from one perspective, I understand where it comes from, but it's also quite confusing, right? Because if I remember correctly, in the theme lists, you don't get a copy of the profiles again from the main list. Like you get...
Completely right. You have to check it in the old book, which now might be not correct until the new book, dear listener, by the new book.
So I remember reading some of those theme lists, and I remember having a hard time really understanding, okay, but wait, what can I do with these guys? Like, what are they? Like, what's the deal here? And it probably makes sense when you know all of the factions extremely well already, and you're like, oh, we take like elves as base, and then you remove this, and this, and instead add this, and this, and then you have a theme list from elves. I'm like, sure, but I don't know elves that well to really follow you here. Why don't you just create an entirely new entry with some duplicate profiles?
I agree.
Completely with you.
And also, for some reason, it just seems incredibly unappetizing and unappealing to me. Like, I don't know, it just feels... It just, for some reason, it just really drains my enthusiasm somehow.
I see how and why. But
sorry, Clem, go for it, buddy.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to...
So, I think the interruptions will increase because I'm realising we're pushed for time. And I'm like, go.
We're fine.
So, Matt Croger's done a lot of this, and I think this is really interesting. So, let's talk it through. So, he's basically talked through all the army lists on an episode of Countercharge. Check it out, dear listener. It's really good. And he basically puts them into buckets of, should we keep these armies or just get rid of them, right?
Yes.
Or make changes. So I'm going to read out the list as Matt Croger came up with, because I think this is really, really good. So these are the armies, the existing armies he thinks should keep. And broadly speaking, it's the new stuff with strong Mantic IPs and has models. So Basilians, he says, keep, but with a refresh and expanse. I completely agree with him there. I think definitely keep it, but also it does need looking at. Northern Alliance makes perfect sense. Ogres, who are now getting the new hard plastics, yeah, definitely. Trident Realms, Abyssal Dwarves, Forces of the Abyss, Clem will be glad to hear. Empire of Dust, Goblins, Night Stalkers, Undead, Halflings, Riftforge Orcs, but with some tweaks to the line. And I think Mantic are actually addressing some of the points he raised, where, you know, like, for example, the Storm Giant model is coming out. Ratkin and Salamanders. Whew, glad that's there.
And everything else just drop. No.
Yeah, not quite, no. So other lists, so stuff to modify or drop. So Dwarves, he's actually saying drop the Imperial Dwarves, which I think is a bit of a surprise, but I kind of like where he's going with this. So kind of merge dwarves into the free dwarves. I really like it, and then obviously you can have a little campaign about what's going on, narrative campaign about what's happening, and go for it. I think that's really cool. Anarchist dwarves are a go, you know, because I think that opens it up then to, you can kind of do your own dwarves, you know. I really like that idea. He also says drop elves, which I think will be controversial to people, but keep Sylvankin, you know, include the elves in the Sylvankin list. But again, I kind of like where he's going with that, to be honest. And then keep Twilightkin, which, yeah, I agree with that also, because I think Twilightkin are a very interesting Mantic army, even if they don't have that. They're kind of a mix of other things. Orcs, he says, merge into Riftforge Orcs. To be honest, actually, from my perspective, I'm not interested in the Orcs. I'd just have Riftforge Orcs. I think they're more interesting. But sure, I'd go with that. He says Undead with Jarvis. He's saying Jarvis comes back as Ophidians. I'm not really sure what it adds to the game, if I'm completely honest. I mean, I know it's in the lore that Ophidians are a thing, but I don't really know what it'll give to the game. Brother Mark, drop them, merge it with Basilia. Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense to me. Yep. Green Lady merge with nature and then call it the Green Lady Army and drop the nature tag.
Yep.
I like that idea. I think nature is at the moment just too generic. Herd, move away from the GW theme, embrace tribal humans, and he's kind of suggesting this would be a great case for going into 3D printing. I love that idea of tribal humans as the herd. I think that sounds really, really interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then his Kingdoms of Men, he said, drop into League of Rordia, which I completely agree with. Ratkin slaves, just get rid of them. Yeah, fine. And then Varangur, he says, keep, but use mostly STL files. So they could use, for example, of course, the Northern Alliance models, the Hard Plastic Human Clansmen, etc. But then for some of their crazier stuff, you could use STLs, and I think that's a really, really interesting idea. So that would take us down to 20 armies or 21 with Ophidia, which to me feels a lot better than the kind of pushing 30.
So a few things. I agree with a lot of the proposals here. I think the mixing in the STL stuff is just, that's not the point. I mean,
no.
Yes, it might make sense for some things for Mantic to use STLs or 3D printed stuff or whatever, but that's a different question.
Totally different, yeah.
I want to focus first on what do we do for the lists and the fluff and the stories. And for me, and I mean, we've talked about it a few times already, it's really about trying to give more of another identity to the armies and the lists. Like build up on the Mantic, like its own IP. Like the Mantic Ogres are a special way, and I think it's worth pushing forward. The Green Lady in nature, I think there's tons of stuff, very cool stuff to do there. Same with the Twilight Kin, like they are not bad elves, they are something else entirely, and I think it's interesting to push forward. The Forces of the Abyss, it's not like GW demons, it's something entirely different. Basilia is not just like the Empire, like they have their own identity, and like it's the same for all of those armies. I think what really is lacking is keep building and expanding their own IP and help us really figure out what's going on in the world. And another thing we've said a few times, evil, neutral, and good kind of sucks. Like it doesn't mean anything, at least to me.
No, not
and
at
all. I would much rather have like five or so big alliances, or like you mentioned, like maybe take the elements as a source for it or something like this, and for within each alliance have like 5 factions or something, and so you would still get 25 armies, but at least they are kind of situated in the checkerboard of the universe, and then okay, why would the Green Lady army fight against Ratkin, right?
Yeah.
Today it's like because I just that's the draw from the tournament, and it's completely abstract, and it's not so. You could say it's good against evil, great, or neutral because nature is neutral, great. But I'm sure there's so much more.
It's the simplest, laziest form of storytelling, right?
Exactly.
These guys are good, these guys are evil, and these are neutral, which is the weirdest thing, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like they could have built on that if they'd have really lent into it, of like, this is the Basilians, this is all kind of Basilian propaganda, right? And if they'd have really lent into that, where we would know, they're actually kind of lying to us, but it's cool. But they didn't really, I don't think they really went for it, So it just comes across as very generic. And as we said previously, you're right. Okay, there's Green Lady fighting Ratkin because it came out of the hat. And, look, there's that generic fantasy house that we always see. And, we're in Mantica somewhere, but, or Pannithor somewhere, but, doesn't really, the lore isn't really affecting us. As you kind of, and also, Clem, the other thing with the theme list is there's good reasons why a theme list can't ally with a master list, but does it honestly make sense to you that basically elves can't ally with Sylvan kin? Like, from a story point of view, how does that make sense, right? That then you think of the armies they could theoretically. It doesn't work, right? That does not make sense.
But I mean, so I have a very simple answer to this. For me, in competitive play, there should be 0 allies. And
yeah, me too. So as we've said, right, we're putting it in the narrative stuff.
So for competitive play, no allies whatsoever. That's what you have to play with. That's it. And then when you play narrative, or like outside of a tournament, or in a like narrative event, or like with friends, and you want to build an army with elves and ogres because you tell a cool story, or you want to try something crazy, it's your game. Go ahead and do it, right? But to come up with weird reasons for allies for competitive play, and also it makes ugly lists. Like, seriously, every single tournament list that I've seen where there are allies, it is ugly. Like, seriously. So I think that's how you solve this stuff. But
you kind of hinted on it, Clem, so I was kind of thinking about it very loosely, and actually the more you think about it, the more you realise these things are actually really difficult, and we should say that. This is difficult to come up with, right? But so I was thinking, putting the armies into different buckets. As you said, Clem, the allies stuff, I think we just completely agree. That's going in the narrative book. That's not for tournaments. But I wanted buckets so that, let's say, for example, Mantic has a campaign, right? A global campaign, and you know that your army is in a certain bucket. So you're going, oh, cool, my Green Lady army. There's something special about my army, right? We're fighting against the other factions, right? And I was thinking, okay, well, let's put them in buckets of earth, wind, fire, water, and the best element, space. So I thought, I won't go into it now, actually. I did kind of put them all into the buckets, and it kind of makes sense. It doesn't work completely perfectly. Yeah. It's not completely satisfying, but it's pretty good. And I just think that would be cool. You could just go with a symbol or something like that, so that when there is some kind of narrative storytelling event, you can just use that purely for that purpose, and maybe a few other cool things you can think of, but just purely storytelling stuff rather than balancing.
I mean, for me, I would rather put them on a map, like kind of flesh out the universe with a map of some sort. And like figure out, okay, this is the area of influence of these guys, and this is the area of influence of those other guys, and sometimes they fight together because it's a local fight. Sometimes they lie against the big bad guy somewhere else. I mean, that sounds like a Song of Ice and Fire right now, but you know what I mean. Like all the humans fight among themselves for a while, and then the Nordlings or whatever they're called come, and then we're all allies against them. I don't know. So I think rather than put in arbitrary buckets, try to put them on a map, because it gives you a bit more of a representation of what they are. And then for campaign stuff, just come up with a big event. There's a big whatever it is thing happening in the universe, and then kind of factions emerge around this, right? Like, I don't know, there's a huge comet hitting Pannithor someplace,
or
and
even something like a drought or something. I mean, they probably want to make it more exciting and magical than a drought. But you're right, Clem, right? So the story is an ongoing thing, right? So let's say there's a global campaign, and it's, the Basilians and League of Rordia fighting against someone or something. We then submit our results from our games. That then drives the story forward, but then someone clever at Mantic can go, okay, but now maybe Rordia isn't happy anymore, and they split off and ally with Ophidia, or whatever we want it to be. So these things are kind of driving the games, and the story are kind of working in tandem, where someone is looking at the data of our games of the campaign, and then trying to, as we do when we play one game, right? We're thinking, we're thinking, well, what just happened? Like, we're rolling all these dice. what makes sense, like what when one of your basic plague guys kills one of my senior dwarves in Firefight, we're like, what just happened with the story of our game, right? So you could have someone on a kind of macro level taking all of this data and figuring out what all this means, and then, hey, what would be cool next? What's the next kind of plot twist, right?
Yeah, in a way, I agree. I think I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't really care to influence how the world develops with my games. I think it's always been a bit gimmicky from my perspective. I would rather have good writers come up with cool events that let me imagine cool stories around it. I don't know.
But could they not? I'll be honest. They can take as much of that as they want to, kind of as an inspiration. I agree with you. I would, if it were me, I would rather collect that data, have a look at it, and then kind of maybe incorporate it a little bit into my ideas. I mean, we're not saying that this is our games definitely directly. I mean, they're kind of inspiring the story, I would say, a little bit.
Yeah.
Giving it a little bit of flavour, however you want to say that.
Sure. My point is, I think the important part is not that they take a lot of time and effort to record existing games to see, all of our players played those games and this is what happened with the battles, and then let's try to explain this with the fluff. I want them to come up with cool fluff events or like backgrounds for campaigns so that I can go and have fun playing games. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, for me, it's almost the other way around. I don't want my games to tell them how the fluff should move. I want their fluff to influence me to have good games. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, buddy. It does make sense. I mean, what we've kind of started to do, I think, is kind of slightly in response to the fact that we're not that happy with the fluff that's there. We kind of are and we aren't, is that we are so let's say we're talking about our weekend in October. We're taking the existing fluff and the elements of that we like, and we're kind of meeting Mantic halfway by kind of putting our own slant on that and kind of doing it ourselves. It would be awesome if, it's true, right? It'd be awesome if we had Mantic, like a professional writer coming up with this amazing lore and that drives our story, our games and what's happening with our armies. That would be awesome. But I'm kind of thinking we ought to just take what we have and kind of be a little bit grateful for it and make the best of it ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and yeah, absolutely. In the end, for me, it's all about having a good background for our games, and I think some of the stuff is out there and exists, and it's up to us, as you said, to go and pick it up and use it and push it and expand it. And I think also that maybe Mantic can use some of the community, right? Like, imagine if we somehow end up with a cool set of scenarios with a narrative campaign around it. Well, why wouldn't they just sign an agreement with us and we say, hey, this is yours, take it, put it in a nice PDF and publish it for free on the website, or like it's the next winter campaign or whatever it is. I think that would be super cool, right? Like, it's just an excuse to play different games. And anyway.
I know Mantic doesn't have tons of money, but I think we're probably, they are a company that does stuff, I wish they would hire a young, exciting writer, give them all, this is Pannithor, this is Warpath. Now your job is just to spend, every day 9 to 5 writing really cool stories in our universe, and we'll use that in various different ways, whether it's a novel, but to be honest, more than that, I'd really want, as you said, Clem, just like getting people's games excited. I'd almost give a lot of this away on the Mantic website, give it away for free, because I think if you had someone just focusing on this stuff, churning out exciting content, that I think there's a huge amount of value in that. Clem,
so
let's let's move on to the probably the most controversial thing we're going to say in the episode. I think it's time that Mantic just said, look guys, we're a company, we have to pay the bills. It's great you like Kings of War, but you've been playing with your Warhammer Fantasy Army for 10 years. It's time you bought a Mantic Army. Our models are nice. Yeah, okay, maybe they're not the greatest in the world. Maybe they're no longer not the cheapest in the world, but they are plenty nice enough. Buy Mantic models and please give us some money and enjoy this game, and we'll continue to make the game that you enjoy playing.
Yeah, I mean, so it's true that whenever we went to Kings of War tournaments, if you look at how many armies are actually Mantic, or like not even just fully Mantic, but majority of Mantic models, it's a minority. In Germany, for certain. In France, I think there are maybe a bit more, but not that much more. When we went to Clash on Kings together, if it was a 25% of armies, it would be really the maximum.
Yeah.
So yes, this is definitely not great for the game, I think. I hope Mantic still survives and makes money somehow with the game, but if they don't sell miniatures, it's hard, obviously, for them. That being said, yes, it's very hard to disagree with me. For me, I really think allowing agnostic miniatures in the game is a thing, and I think it would be a critical mistake for Mantic to try to forbid it, because I think they do not have that power.
So sorry Clem, let me interrupt you for a second. The other reason for saying you have to play with Mantic models is the fact that, I mean, maybe we're not ready yet, right? Maybe it's in 2 years, but we've talked about this loads. Kings of War games usually look extremely generic, and having miniatures as agnostic, armies really leans into that. Where, if you look at the Mantic armies now, as I've said before, I've kind of described it as a Warcraft 3 video games, computer game style. There is Mantic have their own, if you look at Mantic Goblins, you look at Riftforge Orcs, you look at the new Ogres, all the new stuff, they have quite a distinct, it's not exactly unique, don't get me wrong, but I can see it all fits together. Aesthetically, it looks like it all goes together. And, the moment you have people using their Song of Ice and Fire models, GW models, Conquest models in a slightly different scale, and don't get me wrong, I do all this stuff myself, but actually I'm a little bit fed up with it. I want us to feel like we're playing in Pannithor. I want us to feel like, hey, Mantic have sold me this beautiful terrain for my table. We're fighting in the Northern Alliance with Mantic models. It looks, I can ground myself in this game. It's not just generic toy soldiers. So,
to some extent, yes to this, but at the same time, I think I don't want to give the stick. I want to offer the carrot, if that makes sense. And so I think
it does make sense. It does make sense.
But like, how many of these people say, no, you only can use Mantic models now, I think it will just not work at all. Like, the few tournament organizers that are out there will be like, are you insane? Like, we don't have that many players, and you want us to kick out 75% of them? Like, do you want us to stop right away, or like, what's the message here? And so obviously I agree with you for the end result, like the end goal. I would love to see like a Kings of War event where 80-90% of the armies are Mantic models.
Yeah.
But to do this, I think the answer is not, hey, that's the only thing you can do, because that will not work, as I said. It's more, what is the blocker right now? Like, why do people not get Mantic models? And there are probably tons of reasons, tons of things that they can do to try to help with that. But that's, to be honest, and it's maybe not the easiest thing to do either, but to be honest, I think that's what they should work on. Like, if you look at some of the ranges, there are still pretty big holes in there, right? Like,
that's a problem that probably needs to be addressed before you do this. That's true. But like, I mean, it's easy enough. Like, if Mantic don't make models for something, that's fine. You can proxy, right? Of course you can, right?
But that's not just right? Like, look, you have Northern Alliance. How do you make 2 regiments of Huskars? How?
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
It's impossible. Impossible.
That's fair.
So
they're not
or you like Basilia and you want to make a list with Basilia. What do you see in lists of Basilia? Like Palace Ogres or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And it's a resin model that you buy 3x3, and so that's
boxes.
Well, that's what, 250 euros right there for just your 2 hordes. No, that just no.
Yeah.
That will not happen.
But now they've got, I mean, I don't know, but now they've got hard plastic ogres, you know, getting that plus a Palace Ogre upgrade sprue, that makes sense, or kit or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think, you're right, Clem. It's not there yet, but I just think, you know, however many people there are playing Mantic games who have no intention of buying a Mantic army, they're not paying a penny into the game, really. I mean, I'm going to assume a lot of people don't even buy the rule book, even, and I don't think the rule book is a massive profit, you know, center for Mantic. You know, I don't think it leads to huge amounts of revenue. So, you know, I think there are a load of people playing the game who, they're offering something by virtue of the fact they're playing the game, but they're not really putting much. They're not really giving much else, right, to the company that makes this game we love.
I agree. I mean, so I will counter by taking the example of Firefight. I think they've done exactly the right thing with Firefight. And what is that? It's for basically the whole range, like the armies in Firefight, you do get a model. And it's not exactly, I want to buy this one and that one separately. So that's still kind of bundled. But it sort of makes sense. And so I have the impression that if you show up to a Firefight event with proxy models, it's kind of a dick move. See what I mean? Because the Mantic stuff to play Firefight is, in a way, more available and easier to use, and like kind of makes immediate sense.
At a super fair price.
Super fair price, everything. And so, I don't know. I think what they did for Firefight is the right way to do it, and there is some work to catch up on that front for Kings of War, and I think they should still, like, they're not GW, right? Like they can't tell you no, don't do that. I mean, they can, but they have zero power to enforce it, so it would be counterproductive, I think. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm in a position to give them advice. I can maybe say what I would want.
I'd be super interesting, right? Because I think if they said that, if Mantic said, okay, look, we're telling you now in advance, 2 years' time, we expect, you to have a Mantic army. I think a load of people will be very loud and say, oh, this is outrageous, how dare you? But I think deep down we all understand, we're playing this game. Maybe we should be giving the company of the game we love a bit of money. I mean, I think partly what doesn't make this easier is, to be quite honest, in the last couple of years, because of, global economic forces, it used to be that Mantic were very good value models. That's not, outside of the Mega Army boxes, that just isn't that true anymore. They are price competitive, with their competitors. In all honesty, they're not the greatest models in the world. If someone, they're perfectly nice. I love them. A lot of them I love. They're not, but gun to my head, they are not the greatest models in the world. If you were just going pure looks, probably you'll find models that are even more amazing from competitors.
Yeah.
And that's really hard, because you're competing with people who are incredible at this, whether it's people in Spain with Infinity, or obviously, I mean, they're not to everybody's taste every time, but GW do make fantastic models. I mean,
it's tricky. I think you have to think about what is their position in the competitive landscape, right? Like compared to One Page Rule, to Infinity, to Conquest, to GW. I think they have some strengths and some weaknesses, right? Like I'm not saying much by saying that. I think they just have to kind of be aware of that. They probably are. Hopefully they are. And play their strengths and compensate and work on their weaknesses, right? It's basic shit. I say this, but I don't know. So I agree they're not anymore the cheapest ever. Like the old mega armies were just insanely low in price. It's not that much the case anymore. It's still cheaper to do a Mantic army than to do a full GW army, I think.
And you touched on it, Clem. Actually, a Firefight army is still really good value.
Yeah.
That is still great value. Those Firefight Mega Army boxes. Oh, sorry, they're not called Mega Army boxes anymore, are they? But
yeah,
they're great value.
Yeah. I think, maybe it's... some of that is hard with Kings of War because... like, how do you do this? Like, from a practical perspective, right? Like, you invest to make one or maybe two plastic sprues. Like, some armies have two plastic sprues. Okay, like, you have the core of your army. And then, what do? You do Restic. But then people complain that it's shitty models.
I've never felt that, though, to be honest. I mean, I've heard a load of complaints. Not once have I been unhappy with my Restic models. I mean, I would prefer hard plastic, but all my Brockers are Restic. There's nothing wrong with them. Yeah, okay, they're monopose and everything. They're easy to build. They look lovely after they've been painted.
My only concern is more packaging usually. The reason why they're stuck with Northern Alliance, for example, and also I think for some of the Basilians, is because they initially built the tooling they have for those models comes from Vanguard, where they have a small baggie where you have one Huskal, one half-elf Berserker, and one whatever. And so it's impossible with that tooling to sell you a troop or no, but just do a regiment of Huskals. Right now, they cannot do this.
You can't just do a sprue. But actually, I think you made a good point, Clem. Maybe we're kind of thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe if we're talking about this for Kings of War, maybe we need to think about it let's think first what Mantic can actually produce in hard plastics and go from there, rather than...
Yeah, but what's the strategy, right? Because I think at some point the strategy was Restic, and then people complained, and so they swapped to resin. They've done a ton of resin, and there are gorgeous models, but then you end up with a regiment box that is €45. And then you're wait a second, how many of these do I need for my 2,300 point army? Yeah. That's €250 right there for 2 units. That's a problem. You see, so I think it's a few of these questions are a bit difficult. I mean, we can switch now to STLs, right? I don't think STLs are the answer. One reason for that is it's pretty hard to make a good business case with it. To make money with selling STLs, I think, is a specific job, and that's just not what Mantic knows how to do and what to do. It's not their identity to do that, and so I think it's pretty hard. It would be pretty hard and quite a pivot.
So I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think... So I think the argument for this, and sorry, buddy, we are pushed for time as always. I think maybe we'll talk about this more in another episode. But I think the argument for this is if you look at people who, for example, have Patreons, they might be making, with backers for $5 a month, $10 a month. They may be making six figures a month. Yeah. With donations for their STL files. Sure. And I think the idea is that, and this is something Crow just talked about, and I think he has got something here, is the idea is, well, imagine if Mantic had that, and they did, for things like Herd, or
I'll stop you right there. I'll stop you right there, buddy. That's the problem. Mantic does not have the manpower to output much more sculpting. I don't think so, because if you're a good sculptor today, why would you go work for £30,000 a year for Mantic
totally.
when you can make that much money every month working on your own without a boss? This is the problem. I'm not saying necessarily STLs are completely not the way to go. I'm saying I don't think it's Mantic identity or in their capacity to really do that. If they could somehow partner with an existing STL producer to produce stuff for Pannithor, like if tomorrow there's a Patreon for Mantic Games to get STLs from them or stuff like this, I'd be the first one to sign up. But I don't think they can do this, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
like you're not going to get one of the top people who's making 6 figures a month. That's true. But there are a lot of very, very talented people in the world. And yeah, sure, you might only keep them for 12 months, 2 years, and then they go off and do their own thing with that experience. So maybe you're not getting the absolute best people, or if you do, you're getting them while they're kind of learning their trade. But I'm gonna guess that's probably good enough. Again, maybe Mantic doesn't have the best STL, designers in the world, but maybe they don't need to have the very best. If they have the 30th best, maybe that's good enough. And
no, I agree. I mean, if they manage to release stuff, that'd be great. But yeah, I have the impression that it's a question of bandwidth a little bit. So, and again, I think it's really a question of identifying your strengths and weaknesses. And I don't know how to say it. I think, Mantic is really good on the rules themselves and the community that goes around it and creating a really awesome gaming experience. I think no other editor or manufacturer comes anywhere near them. And so they need to bank on this one way or another.
The difficulty they have is that the game bit isn't very profitable. GW make extremely mediocre games, but they make models that sell at a premium price all around the world in hard plastics. So they're hoovering up money. It doesn't matter that their game is actually not very good. People are still buying the models.
Yeah, and they also print tons of shitty books, and people buy the books because you need a new book every other month, and that's it.
Yep. So and Clem, so then I think definitely there's way more conversation to be had about this, and we're at time, but nearly at time. The only other thing, Clem, I'll throw out there is, have you heard about what Privateer Press are doing?
Yes, and I think it's smart. I think it's so they are basically 3D printing themselves the models, and I think this is a smart way to go. I think the alternative was to use a new process called COCAS or something like this, basically 3D printed molds and then some sort of injection plastic, but it's a proprietary technology, and I think something didn't work out. I would guess maybe the conditions for this business deal, like exclusive deal, having only one supplier like this is probably a dangerous business decision, whereas owning your own machines, like 3D printing machines, and doing your own STLs is a bit more safe and a bit more flexible.
So I think the reason they kind of got into difficulty was there was some kind of disagreement with their Chinese factory, and I think basically Privateer refused to pay whatever it was.
It wasn't Chinese at all. Like the COCAS stuff is a British company, like with a high-tech process, blah, blah, blah. And so there were rumors about it.
Yeah, sorry, this is going back a few years now. And basically the Chinese factory held their master molds or whatever to basically as hostage. So pay this or we're not giving you your molds back. So I think they were in a tricky situation. If what I heard was true, by the way, dear listener, that might not be true. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, why not print your own models? I think it's smarter. It fits more what they know how to do to print their own models rather than sell STLs. I think maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure if it solves anything compared to using cast resin. Maybe it does. I
was going to say, does it make it cheaper? I mean, if, for example, fire elementals were 3D printed with resin 3D printers, I think they would look totally fine. Would it make it cheaper for Mantic? Do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea about the volumes and all the stuff. It's a different process. It's like you need a different workforce to do it. It gives you a different capacity. I think it only makes sense if you have a lot more sculptors and you can churn out tons of diverse models. And casting resin makes sense when you have less masters somehow, and then you can do more volume. In an ideal world, I would rather have 3D printed stuff, right? Like every single fire elemental that you get is slightly different from the other because it's very easy to just change the posing of them, and then instead of having 3 of them because you have 3 on the mold, you 3D print 20 different ones, like slightly different ones.
Yeah.
For me, that's always been kind of like a magical thing you could do with 3D printing.
Clem, can you do it with my snow trolls?
Huh?
Can you do it with my snow trolls, please? I have a lot of monopose snow trolls.
Yeah, snow trolls are kind of a failure. Like the same for the Frostfang Cavalry. The design is amazing, but the fact that there's only 2 poses is just like, nope, that's not gonna work. Like, please take those digital models, spend an afternoon making 3 more poses, and sell us those ones, please.
And I find that super frustrating because the rest of the Northern Alliance line looks so good.
Yeah.
And then how was that allowed to slip out the way it was? And I know Mantic have kind of learned lessons from that. They use that as an example. But, that wasn't that long ago. The rest of the Northern Alliance line looks so, so good. And the Snow Troll models are nice. It's just they're all doing the same thing with their club or their rock.
Yeah, with a kind of a weird pose. And it's, again, just taking the same digital model that they already have and spending an afternoon changing the poses for it.
Yeah.
And I would say it's the same for the Elves, Berserkers, and the Huskars. Like the base sculpts are great. And the execution and the production of actual final models could be improved, I think.
The half-elf Berserkers look awesome. The Housecarls, I agree with you. The aesthetics are good. They have got a weird, slightly derpy, not at all... it's not an all dynamic pose. It's a very stilted... As you say, the Snow Troll pose is just weird. Like, it's just a very unnatural-looking, weird arm placement.
For some reason, I think they designed these models to go in Vanguard, where you would use 1, maybe 2 of them. And in that case, it works perfectly fine. And the only issue is then they said, let's take them into Kings of War and make a full horde or like an army with 2 or 3 hordes of those. And then it completely breaks down. Like, the design doesn't work in that context for me, I think. So, yeah, it's hard. I don't have an answer for them, unfortunately. Like, I don't think there's an easy solution. Yeah.
No, we're at a fascinating time, aren't we? Where I think it's a very, very challenging time for companies like Mantic, where the prices of stuff is going up, right? The Mantic's costs are going up massively, whether it's the price of resin or delivery or Brexit or, China or, the Suez Canal getting blocked with a ship. Like, we've had loads of really weird problems, right? So the Mantic's costs have gone up a lot. We're also seeing disruptive technology, as you say, Clem, coming in, whether it's, 3D printing. It's a really, really, I think it's a very tricky... I think we're in one of those weird estuary moments in the industry where we're not really sure what the future looks like. I think people have a very, very firm idea, but whether they're right or not, I'm not entirely convinced. So I think it's a very challenging time for Mantic. And, like, for example, Privateer Press, I mean, people have been asking whether that company has been dead for years, right? They haven't given off very positive signs. And it seems now like everything they do, everyone is using that as a stick to beat them with and say, this company is on its last legs, which is quite sad, right? Because I think it's really, really important we've got competition, right, in the gaming space.
I do,
really, really, really important. Yeah, we've got meaningful competition. So I don't really have any interest in playing, War Machine. But, for what it's worth, I hope that is a success for them and they keep going and keep doing interesting things.
Yeah, I've heard it's a cool thing. Like, someone I know, I've seen the models and they said it's really nice. I think there's
nice.
Mantic does have tons of cards in their hands as well. Like, they do have strengths, and they just need to play the cards well, and hopefully they'll stay around forever, or a very long time.
And I mean, at the moment, everything they're making is absolutely fantastic as far as I'm concerned. They've got the best games in the market as far as I'm concerned. They're making good models. Yeah, if I'm honest, they're not the best in the world, but they're plenty good enough. I like them. It's not like these, we're not saying, I was talking earlier about my Forge Fathers from the 10-year-old box. Yeah, there's only 2 poses, but they're 2 awesome poses. I love how they look. I painted up 16 of them immediately after building them, just because I really wanted to paint them. So, so dear listener, please...
That makes sense.
Play fun games, buy awesome models. Clem mentioned a few podcasts ago, hey, this isn't like we're not whipping ourselves, I think you said. Like, you buy the Mantic models you like, and you don't buy the ones you don't like. And that makes perfect sense, right? You're supporting the company and getting an awesome hobby out of it, and that's the trade-off we want, right? Everybody wins.